Good evening, everyone. This is the Puyallup City Council meeting for March 11th, 2025. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that, and thank you for being here this evening. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Adler?
Present.
Councilmember Johnson?
Present.
Councilmember Whitting?
Present.
Councilmember Gilliam?
Present.
Councilmember Dorr?
Excused. Oh, she's here. Oh, there you are.
I'm here.
I apologize. There she is.
Deputy Mayor King?
Present.
Mayor Castro?
Present. Okay, excellent. Didn't quite hear my name there. With that, again, thank you all for being here this evening. At this time, we always like to identify the youth in the audience, any school children, local school children, or school children in general. If they happen to be here this evening, I noticed a few maybe young faces there, right there. You wouldn't mind just going ahead, standing up, identifying yourself, and if you're here for a particular reason, just say so.
Here with my mom.
Okay, excellent. What high school do you go to? Puyallup High School. Okay. They have something to be very happy for. Second state, pretty good. Can't say we did that when I was there. But anyway, anyone else? Okay, we like to identify the youth and we like to spotlight them because, they're our future. And we hope that we prove worthy enough so that they will someday want to sit on the dais and be a city council member or leader in Puyallup. So thank you for being here this evening. Appreciate that. With that, I'd like to move on to item number one. Item number one on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Let's move on to item number two, consideration of minutes. And we have the approval of the February 11th, 2025 minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Okay, now we move on to probably why many of you are here this evening. We have the presentations and proclamations. We have two this evening, which is kind of rare. We usually do this one at a time, but they're very important, and we thought we would have two of them at this time. The first one is for Fred Oldfield. He recently passed away, but has left a long legacy in Puyallup. If you look right in front of me, you'll see one of his paintings. I happen to have a similar painting of this in my house. When I was very young, my parents dreamed of owning a Fred Oldfield, and they were of modest means, but they happened to be at the Tacoma Mall where there was a painting, and they asked people to bid. And my parents thought there is no way we could ever get a Fred Oldfield painting. So they put in a bid. And then they received a phone call that they won. And they had to go to a bank and take out a loan to buy that. And it took them years to pay off that. And I'm the beneficiary of that. It hangs over my piano in my house. So a lot of fond memories there. With that, let me read this proclamation. Whereas Fred Oldfield was born March 18th, 1918 in Alfalfa, Washington, and he was one of 9 children. And whereas Fred was raised on the Yakima Indian Reservation near Toppenish, and his youth was filled with adventure as he lived the life of a cowboy with covered wagons, galloping horses, and starting fires with cow chips. And whereas a young man, Fred had an array of experiences, including gold mining, boxing, farming, hunting, and working as a cowhand, all of which would influence his paintings. And whereas often called an unconventional man, Fred went against all odds to spend his life living out his passion for painting, and he will forever be known as one of the premier painters of the American West in the United States. And whereas Fred was always active in Pacific Northwest community and he used his talents to raise funds for many causes, including kidney disease research, the Emergency Food Network, and a variety of scholarships for students in need. And whereas Fred enjoyed sharing his love of painting with children, and he was forever grateful for the looks he saw in their eyes when he told them stories of his days on the range, telling tales around the campfire and eating a can of beans from the chuck wagon. And whereas Fred believed in the power of positive outlook on life, making a friend out of everyone he met and sharing a smile and a story with his friends and neighbors. And whereas the Fred Oldfield Western Heritage Art Center was built in 2002, dedicated to preservation of Fred's dream to share his love of life, Western art, and the history of American West with all generations. And whereas Fred Oldfield passed away on February 24th, 2017, saddling up his horse and tipping his hat for the last time. Whereas the Fred Oldfield Western Heritage and Art Center is currently seeking a new permanent home in Puyallup so they can continue to tell Fred's story to a new generation of residents. Now, therefore, I, Jim Castema, Mayor of the City of Puyallup, Washington, do hereby proclaim March 18, 2025 as Fred Oldfield Day. In the City of Puyallup, acknowledge his invaluable contributions to our city and beyond, and recognize that the history, passion, the art of Fred Oldfield will live on for generations. Eyewitness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Puyallup to be affixed this 11th day of March 2025. Mayor Jim Castema, and I'd like to have Joella, his daughter, and I believe his granddaughter too.
Carrie's
Okay.
got the flu.
Well,
We told her she couldn't come.
Okay. Well, whoever else would like to join you, I'd like to give you this proclamation.
More coming? Okay.
If you'd like to join us, please do.
Yep.
These
They
are some
wanna
of our
do a
wonderful
photo?
volunteers, board
Okay.
members. They're scattered throughout.
Okay. Come, you guys kind of move over a little more. Nice and cozy. Okay. Okay, you ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you. I'll get up.
Oh, yes. There you go.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you.
I would love to say a few words. As I look around the crowd, it's becoming more and more apparent that Puyallup is my home, and I've never resided here. I tried really hard. We just bought a home in Bonnie Lake. That's so.
On the other side.
And I can't see everybody.
They'll see you on the screen.
Yeah. I really just truly want to say a quick couple things. We have been at home on the Puyallup Fairgrounds for 22 years. We were blessed. We had a wonderful showcase. Thank you, dear. Oh, people on Zoom. Hi, Lauren. But it was time for us to move. The fair, as you all know, they've closed 9th Street and they're doing all the construction. We had no access to our building. We've outgrown the facility, and believe it or not, we're looking for space. So John helped us. We've just found a house across from the Episcopal Church, and it's our new schoolhouse, we're calling it. We're having a grand time painting and fixing the floors and getting it ready, but the kids are back full swing in classes, 150 kids coming every week, so it's marvelous. We are still looking for an old barn or a building to put our home. I just have one last thing I want to say, Jim. Oh, and Steve, there's another board member that just got here. We have been blessed with the support of this community from the very beginning, 22 years ago. And when Dad would have been 100, he died 3 weeks short of 99, we had a big party, and I got up and I said, you guys are going to be so happy, I'm not going to give a speech tonight. And of course, most of them, like you, were my friends, so they cheered and whistled. And I said, but I have one thought, and I thought about it driving down here today, and I still have the same thought. Fred was 84 years old when we started the center. So for you younger people that are saying, what can I do? I'm 50 years old. Trust me, I've got 30 years on you practically. So there's a lot we can do. In 15 years, Fred touched the lives of over 1,000 children. So I challenge you all to never say, what can I do? Because there's something that each and every one of us can do in our community. And together, Puyallup is just amazing. So here we are, and thank you for the proclamation. It still brings me to tears when someone talks about my daddy. Thank you.
Thank you, Joella. We'll now move on to the second proclamation this evening, Women's History Month Proclamation. Let me go ahead and read that. Whereas March marks Women History Month, a time to honor the contributions, achievements, and resilience of women throughout history. Whereas the City of Puyallup recognizes the invaluable role women have played in the serving, working, and growing in our community, including 153 female city employees and nearly 2,000 female small business owners within the city. And whereas the City of Puyallup acknowledges the diverse contributions of women from all walks of life, including those who have made significant strides in education, business, healthcare, the arts, public service, and whereas this includes female Puyallup Tribe of Indian leaders, City of Puyallup female veteran and active duty military members, female police officers, first responders, female athletes, female mayors, female city council members, a female municipal court judge, female state representatives, female school district superintendents, female community college presidents, female chamber of commerce leaders, and first female chief executive officer of the Washington State Fair in history. And whereas, yeah, you can applaud on that. That's pretty cool. Is Renee here? Okay. All right, we'll keep going. We're talking about you. I need to continue here, okay? Whereas women have been leaders in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist movement, the emancipation movement, the industrial labor movement, the civil rights movement, and especially the peace movements, which create a more fair and just society for all. And whereas, despite their contributions, the role of women in history has been consistently overlooked and undervalued in the literature, teaching, and study of history. And whereas, as a city, we affirm our commitment to promoting, empowering women and girls by creating increased opportunities for women in every aspect of society, especially within the city. Now, therefore, I, Jim Castema, Mayor of the City of Puyallup, Washington, do hereby proclaim March 225 as Women History Month in the City of Puyallup. I witness whereof and have hereunto signed my hand and caused the seal of the City of Puyallup to be affixed this 11th day of March 2025. Congratulations. Now, you have to bear with me. I have a long list of people who will be accepting proclamations. I've got quite a large, yeah, Renee, I think you're going to be up here too. But I have a number of proclamations that I'd like to pass to particular individuals. Well, let's start with Renee, if you would like to come forward with the CEO of the Washington State Fair. And Karen Fisher of Savory and Sweet. Is Karen here? Karen, please come forward. I'd like to get a picture of all of you. I have to read your names first, but if you could come forward. Then I'll hand each of you a proclamation at that point. Jody Robinson of Jody Robinson Cody, and Lacey Welcher of the Firehouse Pet Shop. Beth Curtis of Atomic Genius Records. No stranger to here, Nicole Martineau, Arts Downtown. Caitlin Corrado. She's with Salon-ish. Arla Gustafson, of course, and Renee Muir for Hunt's Furniture. Penny Swam, Brave and Unbroken. Dana Coggin, Executive Director, Pierce Conservation. Allison Schaefer and the Women of the Puyallup Summer Chamber. Shelby Shore with Cascades. Kathy Fenimore with Lazy Ballerina. Kim Field and Amy Wirtz with All Things Fun Sports. Deanna Dillon from Studio 210. And Caleb Johnson from Lashes Downtown. Now, that's all that I have on the list. I have a feeling there's a whole lot more. So if you'd like to come up here and just join this group for a large photograph, that'd be wonderful.
Everyone face this way.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone ready? 1, 2, 3.
Mayor Castema, I'd like to speak. Go.
So we have a spokesperson, Kim Field, if you'd like to say a few words,
Yes,
feel
I do.
free.
Well, first of all, what an honor to be up here with such amazing women. March is all about celebrating the incredible strength of women and the achievements, both in history and in our running community. Did you know that in 1967, Catherine Switzer became the first woman to officially run the Boston Marathon? Despite attempts from removing her from the course, she persevered and finished strong, paving the way for women in running. In our community, we have so many amazing women, especially here in our state of Washington. So let's go through it. Dixie Lee Ray. She was a Tacoma native, a scientist, and the first governor of Washington State. Senator Patty Murray, the first woman to represent Washington in Senate and has been serving since 1993. Janet McLeod, Native American activist who focused on fighting for treaties and for environmental rights. Bonnie Dunbar, the first woman in Washington State to become an astronaut, and she has been in space 5 times. Marjorie Pitter King, the first African American woman to serve as a Washington State legislator. Puyallup boasts of rich history, shaped in both Indigenous and in non-Indigenous women. As I stand before you, I see many women who continue to shape our city and its future, from government officials to business owners and to our community builders. Individually, we are strong, but together we are a force of strength, compassion, and leadership. I am going to end this the same way as I did last year, thanking the members of the Puyallup City Council for recognizing the amazing women of the Puyallup community. And to paraphrase the great Helen Reddy, I can do anything. We are strong, we are invincible, we are women! Thank you.
Okay, I have to tell you, I grew up in the 1970s. I know that song very well. Very well. With that, we're now going to move on to citizen comments. And at this time, you can come forward, and each citizen is given 3 minutes. And we ask that you fill out one of these cards so that we can go ahead and have the appropriate information so that we have to get back to you. We can do that and address any concern you might have. So we'd ask that if you want to speak, please fill out one of these, and then I'll just read them in the order that I receive them. With that, I have our clerk will read the guidelines for these citizen comments. And I don't want you to think I'm rude, but I do have to cut people off after 3 minutes. I have to treat everyone the same, regardless of their point of view, perspective. So just keep that in mind, please. If you don't mind, we're going to wait a few moments. Thank you. Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you for your patience there. Okay, excellent. So let's have our first person, our clerk needs to read the guidelines. Please proceed. Sorry about that.
This part of the meeting is for general citizen comments. Please reserve any public hearing testimony to that section of the agenda. The mayor will call on those who have provided their names in advance. Then the mayor will call for other citizens who wish to speak. For the record, please state your name and address or city council district in which you reside. Please direct your comments to the council as a whole, not individual council members. All comments are limited to 3 minutes. The clerk will provide verbal notice when only 30 seconds remain. As a reminder, this portion of the meeting is council's opportunity to hear from the community and not a time to engage in debate. Lastly, per state law, this public comment period cannot be used to speak in support of or in opposition to a ballot measure or individual candidacy, and no such comments will be allowed.
Okay, with that, thank you. Let's have Conrad Splinter, please, come forward.
Good evening. I am Conrad Splinter. I'm in Division 2. I live over by the WSU Extension campus. I and myself and a couple other members who want to speak tonight are here in opposition of the Fruitwood Overlook development. We are a small community of 3 or 4 HOAs that are going to be significantly impacted by this. So I wanted to come up and identify a few items that I see as an issue for our community. So I'm the president of the Orchard Hill HOA Association. We're just past Fruitland Elementary. One of our main areas of focus is that. Safety is the main piece that I would like to bring up. So the proposal for Fruitwood Overlook is right now going through our neighborhood. We have a cul-de-sac. We have 5 or 6 cul-de-sacs separately. And this would, again, go through there and access their proposed development through our neighborhood. We are 72 homes right now. We have a number of children, school-age children that come through. Development is right now 19 different homes, and as we project, there'll be 219 different cars that would be coming through in addition to what's currently living in the neighborhood. We have sincere concerns about the amount of traffic that would increase in our neighborhood, traffic that would increase around the Fruitland School District or school itself, because if anyone's ever driven by there in the morning or at about 2:30, 3 o'clock, it is gridlock already. So adding additional homes, we have concerns about. Primarily, though, our concern is what happens to our neighborhood. Our neighborhood is nice and quiet. Lots of people walk. Lots of kids walk around. And if another neighborhood accessed their neighborhood through ours, we feel that they wouldn't be as respectful for our neighborhood as those that live within it. Because they're not a part of our HOA. Our neighborhood is unique because it is half HOA and half that are welcomed in, but they're not actually part of the HOA just because of timings of when things were built. So we met last week as an HOA board, and we wanted to specify on the record that we are unanimously against this division development just because of safety and what we have. We have over 15 young students that go to Fruitland Elementary. They'd like to walk and like to continue to be safe. So thank you for the time tonight. Thank you for hearing our concerns. You'll hear a few more from a few of the other HOA board members.
Thank you, Conrad. Angelette Collins. Did I get that name?
Anjanette, yes.
Anjanette,
Thank you.
I apologize.
Yeah. Right. Good evening. My name is Anjanette Collins, and I live adjacent to the proposed residential development of Fruitwood Overlook. I'm here tonight first to thank the City of Puyallup for its commitment to protecting wetlands and critical areas in our community, and second, to bring to your attention a concern about the wetlands at the proposed development and ask that the city closely review this issue before approving any related right-of-way infrastructure work on Fruitland. In the city's October 3rd, 2024 letter to Pierce County regarding this development, it was noted that a wetland is suspected within 300 feet of the project, which is correct. It appears that Pierce County has determined that an existing gravel driveway could be considered a substantial development, thus reducing the required wetland buffer. This raises a few concerns. The access point of the existing site plan for the development is inside the 110-foot wetland buffer that should be protected. While the wetland delineation claims that an existing shared gravel driveway counts as a substantial development, Pierce County Code 18E20, subsection 35B, specifically says that even smaller paved areas don't qualify as substantial improvements. If a paved surface isn't sufficient, a gravel driveway definitely doesn't meet the standard. Furthermore, with the adoption of Ordinance 2024-553-S2, Pierce Code Section 18E2035B was repealed, removing the provision that allowed certain substantial improvements to justify reduced wetland buffers. Consequently, the current regulations no longer provide a basis for considering any structures, including gravel driveways, as substantial improvements that could reduce wetland buffer requirements. Therefore, what's the therefore? Therefore, under the updated regulations, the existing shared gravel driveway cannot be used to justify a reduction in the wetland buffer for the proposed development. I understand that this is Pierce County's jurisdiction, but the City of Puyallup should still ensure all necessary environmental requirements are met before approving any right-of-way infrastructure related to the work for this development. I ask the city to take a close look at this wetland issue to ensure compliance with the most current regulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Max Fan.
Hi, I'm Max Pham, and I'm one of the board members on the Fruitland Ridge HOA Association. And I'd like to voice my concerns about the traffic and with this new development. We've had, as Connor has spoken to, regarding times where the school mornings and afternoons, we've had over, I believe, from my recollections, at least 3 instances where paramedics and fire trucks have not been able to enter our neighborhood during those times. And with the morning traffic and afternoon traffic. So I'd like the city to address and make improvements or ways to address the issues around safety for our children in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. Appreciate that. Dave Crawford.
Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members, thank you very much for having us. I'm from Texas, and as soon as I saw that, I had these latent pains from saddle sores when I was a kid, and I'll tell you, pantyhose work real well. Don't tell anybody I said that. Good evening. My name is Dave Crawford. I'm the president of Fruitwood Creek HOA. You've heard from a number of the other HOAs, Fruitland Ridge and Orchard Hill HOA. We represent a total of 115 homes north and south of Fruitland Elementary and the heavily trafficked thoroughfare of Fruitland Avenue. We're grateful to the city of Puyallup for its commitment to upholding city engineering standards, because we've been very impressed in the research that we've done on this topic. Particularly the proposed development of Fruitwood Overlook at 8712 Fruitland Avenue in relation to traffic safety, site access, and infrastructure requirements along Fruitland Avenue. But to be perfectly clear and honest, we do object to this development. Our primary concern is the lack of access, ingress, egress planning on part of the developer. 2 access points have been proposed by the developer. The first access road has been rejected by the city twice due to traffic congestion, school operation conflicts, spacing, alignment, and site distance records. And your folks are all over it, the engineers, really phenomenal. Currently, the developer has no access plan for the property. But the second access point the city refers to and prefers is the privately owned drive on 87th Street East. I know the property owner of that drive, and she will not allow that. She won't sell it. She won't allow access. It's a very narrow road, and for a lot of reasons, it would just tear the road up, and the congestion would be terrible. However, there's a third option, which the developer's been rebuffed on. One of our neighbors, Myra August, has been relentlessly implored to sell her land to the developer. This land access will impose entire traffic burden of the development onto the residents of Orchard Hill, which you heard about earlier. After a tumultuous and somewhat frightening experience for her, she's an older lady, with the developer, Myra's adamantly stated she will not sell her property. Has written a letter and will send it. I think she sent it today to you folks as well as the folks at the county.
30 seconds.
Okay. Traffic's a major concern. We've already said that. I think it was covered well. Privacy barriers, scrutiny, and concern. A home's being built by the developer number 19 on a little over 3-acre plan. And with footprint occupying 5,400 square feet, these homes are tightly spaced, and they're going to be 35 foot tall. Nearly every HOA home with four of these tall homes right behind them, minus 15 feet from my back door. I have 5 that are planned. And the
Mr.
privacy
Mayor,
concerns.
Speakers reach 3 minutes.
I'm sorry.
Dave, I'm sorry. He just said your time was
Okay,
up.
great. So we do object to the development. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
John Hopkins. John? That's okay. Same thing happens to me.
John Hopkins, District 1. Good proclamations. What the council didn't say is how much help you were in helping them relocate, especially Mayor Castamer and Councilmember Whitting for giving those leads to help them relocate to a good place. So thank you for that. A couple of little things on the Foothills Rails to Trail. The pre-con was just had for the Doc Tate Pavilion, which will be in Buckley. It's to commemorate the founders of the trail, the Foothills Trail, which started in Buckley. And our very own Ernie Bay will be on the list there. And when I saw that, I thought, well, what about the others? You know, what about the other people that have helped? And there's a lot from Puyallup who have helped. So I did ask, and they said, well, this is for founders only. But what we can do is we can put a connection on there to the people who have supported the trail through the years. And some of those names that have popped up Well, you can guess what they are. Dixie's obviously one of them, and I think Mayor Casterman knows a couple of the others who have been extraordinarily helpful over the years in the trails, not just the Riverwalk, but the foothills trails. So I want to bring that to your attention. Probably be done in about 3 months is my guess. And so you'll have that. Let's see, another little footnote or two. Speaking of the foothills trails, the Rainier to Ruston, I presume that you have a team going. And my challenge is pretty simple. See if you can beat what Bill Hilton and myself did a few years ago. I won't tell you how. Yeah, well, we recruited some runners who were really fast. We were slow, but they were fast. We were the first to the beer tent. Yes. That's something to be proud of, I think. And just to kind of confirm regarding the missing link on the Riverwalk, there is now $5,000 earmarked in the Foothills Rails to Trails accounting to start the asking for grants, and that will represent a start for community support. You need that if you're asking for grants. So it's there, it's confirmed, $5,000, nothing to sneeze at, it's a start. Thank you very much for everything.
Thank you. I guess I should say it was the blank there was my mom and dad, Bob and Diane Castema. I can't go without saying that they were one of those key individuals. So I had to say that. They passed away. But anyway, let's move on. Carrie Yanasak, please.
Carrie Yanasak, District 2. For some reason, I feel like I need to say hello, Lauren. I'm not sure why, but that's the thing tonight. Here representing the Puyallup Main Street Association, just to let you know that we are very excited about the future development of both the Camel Cornforth lot and the AOB lot and the choice of developers for doing that. So, as you know, I've kind of mentioned this before, this is long in coming for downtown. Like, we have worked very hard to make downtown attractive and a place that people, citizens of Puyallup would like to go, and a lot of that's starting to happen. Now we need people living downtown and housing, and so we're very excited about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate that. Sarah Blakely.
Thank you. My name's Sarah Blakey, and I do live up at Harvest Gate, but I've worked in downtown Puyallup for 6 years. My topic of concern is the homeless people in our community. And as I've been concerned about individuals, I've looked around to see what kind of services are available, what type of shelter is available, what kind of supports these people are getting to maybe make their lives a little better and to be able to be better neighbors to all of us. I know that some of the churches and nonprofits have provided food and meals. I don't see any tiny houses or established shelters in this community, although this used to be called the home of the generous people, where I know in the indigenous cultures, nobody would be without a home. I have been told recently that there is a nonprofit that has a trailer that provides free showers and another one that provides free laundry services, but they have been denied permission to operate within city limits, and I'd really like to know why. And when I drive down Pioneer, I see a lot of churches. So I think it's safe to assume that there's a lot of Christians in this community, and that the Bible reminds us to be good neighbors to everyone, not just the people that look like us or live in our own cul-de-sac, but to everybody, and to serve the needy. And I hope to see more of that happening in this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Utterback.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Tom Utterback with Washington State Fair. Speaking to item 7A on your agenda, which is the first ordinance reading for the comprehensive plan update. The State Fair proposed over a year ago a number of zoning map amendments for properties owned by the fair which are located outside of the main fairgrounds. Most of those were cleanup in nature, and they'll be dealt with by city decision makers at a later date. Tonight, under item 7A, is your comp plan map amendments, and there are two areas which affect the fair property. One of those is the kind of narrow row of parcels on the north side of 9th Avenue Southwest, right where the Festival Street is now being proposed, and also some smaller pockets on the west side of Fairview Drive itself. Later on, when you're on item 7A, in your packet on page 44, staff has outlined what they consider alternative amendments. And therein, they have said that they recommend that the State Fair's comp plan map amendment requests be reinstated and approved by City Council tonight as a part of this comp plan amendment package. They also outline in there how later this year, they've laid out a process whereby zoning map amendments and zoning text work for those peripheral fair properties will be dealt with concurrently, so that if there are any concerns about land use issues, they can be dealt with in the code before any zoning is applied. So the fair strongly supports and appreciates staff's recommendation to you tonight, and we would ask that you follow through and include those fair comp plan map amendments within your ordinance action tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Romich.
Thank you, Mayor Castamo. Paul Romich, District 1. Yeah, I just want to thank council for the proclamations today. It's always good to recognize our own and celebrate them. So thank you for that. And also just here to voice my support of the AOB lot development. If it's anything like the Cornforth Campbell one, it's what we need more of in our city, which is mixed use and provide more business and housing opportunities for Puyallup residents or prospective residents. Yeah, excited to learn more about that. And then I also want to speak to the future land use map, part of the comprehensive plan that we're going to be talking about today. Again, I support it as it is, really. The commercial nodes, again, our existing use already has commercial use, so it makes a lot of sense to make that non-conforming use conforming, so that way we can continue to grow organically, because that's how they came into be, and continue to let those neighborhoods benefit from those employment centers as well as the services that they provide, and provide that a little more closer to home for many folks. And hopefully provide more of it in the future as well. And finally, yeah, just one thing I want to call out is the zoning for the fair does also allow them to extend the parking radius. Again, just really good if, I think if the council is proactive to get something on the books to amend our ordinance to, I know the fair's offered to work with council to get that limited to the gated area, but just to get it as is right now, because last thing we need is more vacant lots that only that don't provide any productive land use of that sort. So just, yeah, we want to make sure that's still a priority and that ball doesn't get dropped. Other than that, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Wayne and Joanne Jurgensen. They were here wanting to speak regarding Fred Oldfield, and they may have been one of the individuals who came forward here. Tim Gersman.
Good evening. My name is Tim Gerstmann, District 1. I wanted to speak on the consideration of the development plan for the housing across from the senior center. And what strikes me as missing from that proposal is any incorporation of affordable housing as a component of the apartments that will be built above the commercial space. We have the Cornforth project and now this one in downtown, and what's being proposed is all market rate housing. And I think earlier speakers have talked to the idea of the need for addressing affordable housing in our community, and obviously not every project can address every level of income, but I think it's a missed opportunity if there is no look at the proposal to be able to build in some sort of affordable component to the units that are going to be built on the site. There's tools like the multifamily tax exemption, as well as other types of financing that can be brought to bear. And I think it's like I said, it's a missed opportunity now with these two projects that are going to be bringing some density to housing near downtown. And I really would hope that the council would give some consideration to that as this proposal goes forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Tim, just so you know, the Cornforth does have the affordable housing component with that multifamily tax exemption.
Okay. Yeah, I went back and looked at that, and that didn't pop out in the document I was reading. So my apologies for misrepresenting that.
It's fine. Thank you. Steve Aldrich.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm that close to District 3. No demos tonight. If you didn't catch it last time, you're beyond hope. Anyway, what I'm going to ask today is, do you know what a UGA is? And what is the purpose of a UGA in relationship to growth? If you don't know it, you should look it up. In fact, I think your planning department should look it up, because I don't think they've included it in your plan at all. It'd be obvious if they did. I'll give you a hint. It has to do with growth. So where did it start from? Well, the state dictated in the Growth Management Act that you're going to have UGAs. Pierce County designated UGAs. So how does the Pierce County comp plan interact with Puyallup's comp plan? Right now, I don't see any interaction. I don't see any communication. There's nothing. So 25 years ago, I was on the South Hill Community Planning Board, the original board. There was good things and there was some bad things that came about later that we missed. But when that started, the directions were from the Pierce County Council that here's your boundaries. They set a boundary. And it went all the way north to 116th Street and stopped. And so from 116th Street to 112th Street is UGA. You can't touch that, because that will be defined by the Puyallup at a future date. They will decide what they want their growth to be in that area at a future date. So it wasn't included in the South Hill plan. It was designated as Puyallup is supposed to take action on that and incorporate it into their plan. What kind of growth do you want in that area? And this applies to other UGAs around the city on the other three corners. Anyway, I ask you guys to stop and consider and ask planning why they never considered UGAs in this comp plan. This next 20 years, and they're planning nothing outside their city limits. They're absolutely planning nothing. So people are going to get a little irritated. They're just going to say, forget your problem. We'll just go to the county and we'll just have a zoning change and we'll just build whatever we want. I don't know if that's going to be good or bad for you guys, but that's going to happen if you guys don't pay
30
attention.
seconds.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Doc Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Doc Hanson, District 2. I'm here to comment on item 7A. I went through it, and I don't know if I missed something, but there's a number of comments from various jurisdictions. But if I missed it, there's no comments by staff directed to the comments that were made by the citizens. So I submitted comments since January. And so what I would ask is that before you do the first reading and finish the first reading, that you find out about those comments. And I would strongly recommend that you have staff respond to them for your purpose. I'm a professional planner, and whenever I was developing plans, we addressed every citizen comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc. Appreciate that. Now, I am through with the people who have filled this out. We tend to have a fairly strict policy that you have to fill one of these out only because we've had people speak and we have had no way to contact them to notify them of the results or answer their questions. But I am going to allow this evening, if individuals would like to come forward who have not filled out this form, please feel free to do so. Would anyone like to do that? Okay. Just state your name, please, and what district you're in.
David DeGroat, District 3. I'm here speaking for myself and not as a member of the Planning Commission. Mr. Mayor, council members, this is in regard to the amendments proposed. Article 1, Section 12, special privileges and immunities are prohibited. This is from our state constitution. No law shall be passed granting to any citizen, class of citizens, or corporation other than municipal, privileges or immunities which upon the same terms shall not equally apply to all citizens or corporations. Our RCW 3670 regarding comprehensive plans requires municipalities to identify local policies and regulations that result in racially disparate impacts, displacement, and exclusion in housing, and to identify and implement policies and regulations to address and begin to undo racially disparate impacts, displacement, and exclusions in housing caused by local policies, plans, and actions. So RCW 3678 goes beyond what the state constitution demands by not just requiring correction or elimination of racially focused plans and policies, but by using the phrase begin to undo, suggesting a process whereby some residents should receive particular consideration or benefits not available to all and on the basis of race or ethnic history. The term used to describe this process is equity, which can be used as a synonym for equality, but as used by the Puget Sound Regional Council in our proposed comprehensive plan clearly is not. Using equity as a reason for advancing the interests of one group over another is not only inconsistent with our state constitution, it is in fact the opposite of inclusion. The wide-ranging insertions of equity into our comprehensive plan is a classic case of begging the question. Begging the question refers to a fault in an argument in which the speaker assumes some premise that has not been demonstrated to be true. In modern usage, it has come to refer to an argument in which the premises assume the conclusion without supporting it. Disparities in ability to obtain desirable housing can affect persons of any race or ethnicity based on language ability, educational level, criminal record, work history, income level, and credit score. The PSRC's Vision 2050 and our proposed comprehensive plan do not even pretend to examine any reason for disparity in housing other than racial exclusion. Puyallup should not submit to a requirement that is so clearly flawed, let alone parrot its argument in a housing equity analysis report. We can and should commit to examine all policies, plans, and actions to find and correct any that
Mr. Mayor, the
discriminate
speaker has reached
against
3
any
minutes.
person on the basis of race or ethnicity.
Thank you. Your time is
Thank
up.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay, anyone else? Okay, if not, we're now going to move on to the consent agenda. By the way, thank you very much for your comments. Appreciated those very much. If you would like to go ahead and feel free, you're not going to disturb us if you want to leave at this point. It gets a little boring from this point forward, unless you, of course, you're into the subject matter. But let's go ahead and move to the consent agenda. The consent agenda, just so you know, is a list of items that are in agreement by council members, non-controversial, and in one vote, we vote for all of them. Having said that, is there any issue, any item on the consent agenda that any member would like to have removed and put at a later point in the agenda for discussion? Hearing none, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I hear such a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Excellent. Let's move on to number 5 on our agenda, resolutions. A resolution retiring Puyallup Police Department Canine ICE. If we could have Captain Greg Massey from the Puyallup Police Department introduce the resolution, that would be excellent.
Thank you, Mayor Castema, Deputy Mayor King, and Council. My name is Captain Greg Massey from the Puyallup Police Department, and before you tonight is a resolution retiring Canine ICE from service with our department. Canine ICE served faithfully for 4 years and had 208 applications. Canine ICE is being retired as his handler, Officer Nathan Jendrick, has recently been promoted to sergeant. And so as is our practice for retiring police canines, ICE will retire and live with Sergeant Jendrick's family. And so the city will sell ICE to Sergeant Jendrick for $1. And with that, I'm available for any questions if you have any.
Thank you. And let me ask you, what is the purpose of the resolution? I mean, what will this accomplish? Decommissioning, so to speak?
Yes, absolutely.
I see. Do they, never mind, I think that's fantastic. Councilmember Johnson, please feel free to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly support this resolution. I only wish that if we were going to decommission an officer, that we would be able to see the officer and to enjoy, as we would if it was a human officer. He's certainly a part of the force. So I would ask that maybe at a future date we might be able to see recommissioned canine
ICE.
Dog ICE to come and join us so we can congratulate him on his service. It would be appropriate, and I think that would be, I could see that in the future if we do that. So yeah, I'm certainly going to support this, but it should be fun to see who served well and the handler who got promoted and see that connection there. So
yes, sir.
Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the opportunity to be here for his retirement of ICE and last week, and it was a great ceremony, and it was bittersweet at the same time because I got to see his last bite, so to speak, at the end.
Yes, sir.
And I was just hoping that it was going to be Councilmember Johnson coming out in that bite suit. I'm kidding, of course, friendly banter. But no, it was a good event, and it is my understanding that even though we are retiring ICE, and for him to not continue on with a different officer because of the promotion, that it's a good idea to keep him with the handler. But due to the position change, it was not accommodating in that way. So for him to stay with Jendrick is great, and it's a good thing to do, and thankful for all that ICE and his handler was able to accomplish.
Absolutely.
So
thank you.
Okay, the mayor would entertain a motion to accept the resolution.
Motion approved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, oh, pardon me. I see a hand that's raised over here. Councilmember Whitting, and then Lauren, Councilmember Adler, would you like to speak too?
No, thank you. I just was highlighting that Councilmember Whitting had his hand up. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate you doing that. Councilmember Whitting.
Thank you for recognizing me. I had the honor of attending that retirement ceremony along with Deputy Mayor. And I have to say that ICE is an impressive animal. The work ICE has done has been impressive. German Shepherd and Belgian Malinois, just a fantastic animal, and I think Puyallup has been well served, and hopefully we can get another service animal like him in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Whitting. We were right in the middle of vote, but we had not actually finalized it. But I'm going to go right back to where we were. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay. Opposed? There is none. Captain Massey, thank you for that. Okay, now we're moving on to number 6 on our agenda, considerations and requests. Downtown economic development. This is a proposed mixed-use project on city-owned property at 330 3rd Street Southwest, commonly known as the AOB property. And Steve Kirkley, our city manager, will introduce this item and take it from there.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Castum and council members. Thank you very much. We are here this evening to bring a proposal before you regarding the AOB lot. And this is something that staff has been working through over the past several months, and we are now at a point where we're ready to present it to you and the public. So for this evening, I'm going to just briefly go over why this project and why now. Some of this you might have heard recently regarding the Cornforth Campbell project, but council has clearly given direction over the past several years about redeveloping and reinvigorating downtown. And I think when you see this project, as Ron and Walker go through it, you'll see that indeed it will achieve that. Then I'll go over just some very key components of the development agreement. As you will hear at the end of the presentation, tonight we're not asking you to take any votes. This is the opportunity for us to present to you the work that we've done thus far. We're going to get a consensus, hopefully, from you that, yes, green light, keep going, and then we'll come back at a later date with a more formal presentation. And at that point, that's when you would actually start to take votes on the project. Then Ron Thomas and Walker John will do a presentation, primarily Ron. He's the architect that is working with Walker on this. And then I'll come back up and just rehash the next steps. So just to orient you and the public to the AOB lot, we call it the AOB lot, and I think sometimes in government we use these acronyms and we forget what they mean. So AOB stands for Administrative Office Building. It is called that lot because that is where we had our administrative offices before City Hall was built for about a decade or so. And so it's located right where this yellow square rectangular lot is, right west of the library. So that's where City Hall was for several years. And when this building that we are in this evening was opened in 2008, we then relocated over and eventually demolished the building there. So that's why it's called the AOB site. You're very familiar with this. This is in the city's comprehensive plan that we've talked about, you've talked about, that really focuses on redeveloping downtown, turning it into the centerpiece of our kind of the heart of the city, so to speak, that provides more denser development, more walkable developments, more people in downtown. When you have more people in downtown, living in downtown, it supports our existing businesses, it supports future businesses. And so this is something that we've really been focusing on, and this project certainly checks many of these boxes, as you will see. This is just a brief history. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you all, City Council, has been working on your focus in downtown for 20 years. Started with downtown Charettes many years ago with the public. And then in 2008, we were awarded one of very few cities in the state, I would remind you, with this local infrastructure financing tool. And that is money where we get to keep sales tax here in the city to use for infrastructure development. And so that's a very unique grant that we have from the state and we continue to use each year. Then in 2017, the city did a downtown plan action environmental impact statement, which basically does the environmental review for developments in downtown. So when a proposed project comes in, they don't have to go through that extensive process. The work's already done. So that was in 2017. And then, of course, in 2019 was our downtown economic development plan, which really a key focus of that was housing, among many other components of it. So we are very excited to be here tonight. Meredith Neal, our Development and Permitting Services Director, is here as well and can certainly answer any questions. She's played a very pivotal role to date in this project. Here it's just some key components of the development agreement. This is a proposed development agreement. It will formally be before you if you give us a green light tonight to come back at a later date. First of all, Urban Olympia is a developer. You will get to meet Walker John, who is here this evening. He's the owner of Urban Olympia. Ron Thomas with Ron Thomas Architecture Studios works with Walker and Urban Olympia. They have done significant projects. You will get to see some of those this evening. They are proposing a 138 unit mixed use building. Mixed use is another term that we in government use. Basically what that means is it's not one use. So you have residential and you have commercial or retail. So as you will see here, be 4 floors of residential and ground floor will have some retail commercial component. We have had the property recently appraised. Its market value is $1.9 million, and as part of the agreement, Urban Olympia would pay the city that market value. We also recognize that there could be some concerns about senior center parking, and so as part of the development agreement, Urban Olympia will put in 29 angled parking stalls on 3rd Street, and city staff will work with the Senior Activity Center to ensure that 20 of those stalls, Monday through Friday, are used for Senior Activity Center patrons. So that's just kind of a high-level overview of the development agreement. I'm now going to turn it over to, I believe, Ron Thomas with Thomas Architecture Studios, and he will go through the proposal.
Thank you, Steve. Again, I'm Ron Thomas, president of Thomas Architecture Studios, and it's been 20 years since my last designs were completed here in Puyallup, so it's good to be back. Tom, good to see you as well. He is working for the city back at the day. This project is a culmination of a lot of hard work, and I want to compliment your staff for doing an amazing job and bringing us this far. The project that I'm going to show you here, first, just a little bit of our experience, and I thank some of you for coming down and seeing some of our projects firsthand. This is an example of some of our urban projects, and again, Urban Olympia and now Urban Puyallup. That's what Walker is all about. I'm the designer and the talker. He's the doer, so he gets things built, and that's why I've enjoyed working with him so much. All of these projects you're seeing, these are just over the last roughly 15 years. We've been working together for about 18 years now. Some of our early work is adaptive reuse, and much of this that we're seeing now, this is all new construction, like your project, and a variety of locations, all in urban settings. These are all 4/1, 3/1. This is a new one. So I didn't sit and count them all up, but I'm sure we have 600 to 700 units built, and we have roughly another 600 to 700 that are in one form of design and or permitting or under construction. So there's a significant number. This is called 401 Union, and this one, let's see if the picture's here. Darn it. This one's almost fully built. It'll be occupied in July. So the next I'm going to show you, these are concept drawings. I caution you, these are designed to show you the scale of the development, the architectural elements, the vertical, horizontal articulation, basically to align with your land use code. So here is the site, the ground floor on Pioneer and 3rd. The retail commercial area is clustered up on Pioneer. The rest of that ground floor is largely parking, nearly 100 spaces here. And this is orientation is turned 90 degrees. So again, the commercial on the right with the main lobby off of Pioneer, secondary lobby off of 3rd. The parking that was mentioned, you can see part of it here, 29 stalls off of 3rd. And then what we are proposing is a slightly raised sidewalk that'll get seniors safely across and down the alley to the Senior Activity Center. This is just one of the typical floor plans. Blue would be 1 bedroom, green 2 bedroom. The slight light orange color are studio alcoves, and then the lighter purple color are studios. 35 units per floor, a combination of 2s, 1s, and studios. And address the one gentleman's comment about attainable, affordable. A lot of our units, our studios and studio alcoves, we truly think of those as attainable. If you were at 80% of the AMI on an affordable unit, you're going to be very close to the price of our studio units. So we really do try to get a number of units that are attainable to workforce housing. This is consistent across all of our developments. 2 of the units are taken up by an amenity space you can see on the south end of the building there. Of course, facing Mount Rainier and south. That'll be a very nice space. And here's the first of the renderings that we've generated. I know this is going to look an awful lot like something that's fully baked and fully designed, but again, this was necessary in order to assure compliance with your land use code. This is from Pioneer and 3rd. One of the things in the pictures I showed you of our experience and the pictures here, we are very committed to a building that looks like it's been, and it's going to be a significant building for many, many decades to come. That's why you see the brick. You see a lot of good urban principles applied, the commercial right on the sidewalk edge. And as a matter of fact, we actually pushed the sidewalk back a bit to create more room on the sidewalk. And then the canopies, again, good for pedestrians. There are many scaling elements that are used. It's got a strong base, middle, and top tripart design. And here's a full view down 3rd Avenue. This is the alley that's on the back side of the Senior Activity Center. And what it's leading to, excuse me, that's actually an easement that goes all the way through the site. That's a utility easement. There are a number of utility easements all along 3rd Street. We're literally designing around them. So if a large piece of equipment needed to go through there, it can. There's enough height clearance for doing that. Again, along 3rd Street, and you'll notice the building brick colors are changing, the materials are changing, the setbacks are changing. There's a lot of scaling elements to bring it down to the human scale. At the south side, again, a variety of colors, a variety of step backs along the way. And as we make our way around, this is the southwest corner. There's requirements for landscaping, horizontal and vertical landscaping. Even though it's a lot of parking down there, we usually, with landscaping, with artwork, we try to screen it and make a good pedestrian environment. This is a view of that, the alley connection that we're creating, a little pocket park. And there's the view at night. And here's the view, just as you're walking along Pioneer with the retail activated street and the lobby. Oh, I think I went past one of them. This is another view of the entry. That's just a working name, not the name of the development yet. We're working on that. We have a lot of fun picking out an appropriate name. And the view from the amenity deck on the south with Mount Rainier in the background. And then here's the final night shot. So with that, Walker's available to answer questions. I'm available. So just thank you for the opportunity to get this far. We look forward to beginning, hopefully, in the very near future. So open to any questions you might have.
Okay, members, council members, do you have any questions? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I answer questions, I just want to find out, I don't want to cut Walker off. Did you have any kind of presentation that you were going to give? And if so, I'll let you finish it. Otherwise, I'll...
No, Ron gave the presentation. We really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm really looking forward to working here in Puyallup, and so excited about the project.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So I do have some questions, and open it up to whoever, Ron or Walker, would like to answer. So something is better than nothing. And I certainly will confess that. And so I'm grateful for this something, which is a significant something. I'm not downplaying it. But this is city-owned property, and if this was like the Bell property where it's privately owned and there are zoning, allowances, then whoever that property owner, they can develop it within that range of the zoning allowances, and we support that. I think from a city-owned property, we have a little bit of perhaps unique opportunity to desire certain aspects that we think was good for the community overall. But again, I want to go back to something is better than nothing. I could get behind this project. It will probably face some opposition. We've seen a prior development that came in here before, and I know what that's going to be. And it's not going to be a cakewalk. There's going to be some teamwork support required on all parties to, calm, assure, and move it forward without the risk of, derailing or just creating a lot of stuff. So I want to get behind this and cheerleader it, and I could and may, but there are some elements, I just want to put it out there, that to me would move me right into that. I really appreciate apartments. I think they're wonderful, and they provide a place. Puyallup has quite a few apartments. As you go up down Meridian, there's probably 1,000 or so going up the hill. We have the AOB lot, or the Cornforth Campbell. It's going to put about 140 there. Another, 150-ish here, or excuse me, 140-ish there. And then I know the Bell property, there are some, as a private development, there's probably conversations of 150-ish there. So that's about 400 apartments condensed in probably a 3 or 4 block radius. And 2 of them are city owned, and we kind of set the tone for kind of green lighting that potentially through. I tend to like home ownership, where there's some, people have skin in the game and they invest in the downtown core to buy, not just rent. And there's investment when you rent down here because you're going to support businesses and so forth, so on. And so I'm not against it. But at least with the AOB lot, there was some element, even though it was small, and I think it was a couple of nuts on the top of the giant sundae of humoring by allowing what I think there was 7 townhomes. Okay, so we got 7 potential homeowners in that property, and it was a nice gesture. And I appreciate that. It was something. I would sure love to entertain. It doesn't need to be answered tonight, and it doesn't even have to happen at all. But I would sure be willing, and really willing, to get behind this and help join a united front if there was some element with some sections for ownership. Maybe the penthouse area, you could have some condo or purchase option. It would be grateful to see. Again, it's not a condition. It's not a stop the brakes. I would just say it would be nice to know if at some point there was an option for that, even if not initially, perhaps later. I don't know. I just want to get them on the table, be transparent about it. Those that know me know I've been very focused on this. But I can tell you, I figure if you have not because you asked not, and so I'm asking, is there an element potentially for that? And if so, you're probably going to have a pretty strong cheerleader that's articulate that could help, and join with that. And if not, I'm not going to say I will be against it, but I'm just saying it would really be nice for our community to have some element of certain areas that have option for purchase.
Good. So the problem with what you're referring to basically is condos, right? Condominiums are for purchase units, apartments are for rent. And historically, they've just been ripe with litigation, unfortunately. And to the point where it gets, one of the projects Ron showed there, the white painted buildings, right on the Puget Sound, beautiful. First thing I did was I want to go build condos here. This makes all the sense. It's right on a marina. It's gorgeous. And I went and sat down with my attorney and I said, why can't I build condos here? And after an hour, I said, I'm not building condos here. And the bottom line is once you, for whatever reason, you build condos, you're going to get sued no matter how well you construct it. That's just going to happen. There's a 10-year warranty period on it. Not only that, the insurance cost to even get a construction insurance policy is, the one I looked at was probably like $500,000 on 44 units. They're just really challenging. I have a philosophy of like staying in my lane. I don't understand that business. I have a passion for urban housing, building market rate apartments. I'm good at it. We spend a lot of time on the architecture, I think more than a lot of developers. I have Ron can tell you that probably more than any of his other clients, I'm in the details of move this here, do this here. I mean, the challenge with this project is we've got a really narrow, long, so we have really a ton of space that we have, this could look like a really long building. And so we wanted to break it into basically three pieces to kind of break down the massing of that block. And so anyway, I think I'm not going to sit here and blow smoke. It would be a real challenge for me to try to put for sale units in here. I think we've designed a really wonderful project, and I'll tell you that we're going to deliver on it. I mean, I've got a great team. We develop, we build, we manage, we do it all. It's a small group of people. If anybody's been in my office, it's just in the back of one of my buildings. But this is what we do. We build apartments, and I think we do it really well. So.
Yeah, thank you for that. And again, just want to put that out there. Hypothetically, and again, you stay in your lane, so I just want to pose this scenario. I understand your litigation concerns, but if there was information out there that showed that if there was a very small amount of units in proportion to the apartments that might exempt that from lawsuits, would that be a game changer?
I'd like to recommend that you follow up with Representative Barkas. He's working on condo reform laws, and very proud of what he's done so far, and it's made almost zero difference to the industry, to the developer, to the architect. We're still as exposed as ever. The contractor, the engineers. And what Walker described is exactly what happens probably on 90% of all condo projects.
Yeah.
We will get there. So, but that's not to disagree that a mix of homeownership and apartments would be outstanding. The idea of an exemption, if let's say 10% or below of the units are homeownership, they're exempt from condo law. That's an excellent, kind of the way we started with affordable. If you do 20% of this.
Right.
So I would strongly suggest that you follow up.
Well, I'd like to inquire, because if there is allowances to protect the developer from legal liability, yet provide an extra package for sale, then it could be considered. But if in fact it's truly fully liable, no matter if you have a few units or all units, that's a different story. And I will state for the record publicly is I absolutely resent, despise, what are some other adjectives I could put? Angry at high levels for a legislating group within Olympia, in this case, that has not addressed home ownership through condo reform laws that would allow micro units to be built and sold for those who want to enter into entry-level home ownership, and then putting a barrier up that would, because of liability, and not addressing that. That part, I completely champion and resent that.
Further add to that, this type of housing, and condos would be included, is the most sustainable thing we can do. Why? Because the infrastructure is already there, the roads, the utilities, the sidewalks. So locating, this is the difference between the housing up on the hill and the housing downtown. Puyallup is way, way short of providing urban housing, and I'm excited to get started. I hope this is the first of many projects here, and I'm grateful to the city for making this site available. I think your staff has represented you well in getting some amenities for the city, for the seniors, and so we hope we've incorporated that well into the project.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's all I had for questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I have a question regarding the retail space down below. What are your plans for that?
There's no specific plans, but it'll be for rent retail space. So, I mean, personally, I'd like to get food, some kind of a food sort of
A
service.
restaurant?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is always nice. When you've got apartments, I think it kind of sells the apartments too, to be able to go down and eat, at the first floor or whatever. It's kind of a nice, but it'll be retail.
Well, Walker, I do want to let people know that I did come down to Olympia and I did see your projects, and they're excellent.
Thank you.
The quality that you use is markedly different than other apartment buildings across the street. I mean, there's a noticeable difference. And it's very important to the people of Puyallup that the buildings we build, and we've upped our standards in downtown because of this, is that what you build in 50 years, we want it to look just as good, or who knows, maybe even has a little bit of patina on it and weather as well.
Yeah.
We want it to look good. And so many communities have destroyed their downtown areas by putting in just very harsh kind of a lot of metal and things of that sort. And we want to stay away from that because people here tend to, well, just like the next person who's asking a question, Councilmember Adler, I think she's like fourth generation, I've lost track, okay, of how many people here for a long time. And speaking of which, Councilmember Gillian, same thing. These, all families have been here for years, so we take tremendous pride in what's built in our downtown. And I want to thank you for considering Puyallup and for the work that you've invested in this. I'm not sure who is first. Councilmember Gilliam, I'll let you go first, and then Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. If I can make a recommendation to try to get this specific restaurant in there, I would live there. I don't know if you guys have ever enjoyed Trapper's Sushi, but I'm a huge fan, and if you can get them in your retail space, I would greatly appreciate that.
We'll look into that.
Okay, there you go.
No, we several of us got to tour in Olympia some of your buildings, and I was absolutely blown away by the beauty, the connection to community, the intentionality to pull people together and to create that connection. So if this is what it's going to look like, I'm actually really excited about it. I like that, it's long, but like you mentioned, you broke it up so it wouldn't look just like a square log or, like it's concrete.
Yeah, it's a little
block.
challenging of a site, but for sure.
And I also wanted to say I really, really appreciate the accommodation for the parking for our senior citizens, at least recognizing that, we are an elderly-friendly community. And I think with the new construction going in, that maybe some of our elderly are feeling a little pushed out. And so I really appreciate the intentionality behind making sure that there is a space for them to be able to park and get where they need to go, which is our senior activity center. So I just wanted to highlight those things, and thank you. And go Trappers.
Thank you. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I would like to take a moment and thank you for your interest in the city of Puyallup, in our downtown, and specifically with this property. Very much appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into the presentation and what you have put together in your vision for this property. This property is personal to me for a variety of reasons. Number one, it is true. I'm unfortunately only a third generation Puyallupian, as I like to call myself. But I have long desired to see development like this in downtown. As a millennial who has great respect for our city's history and heritage, and frankly, simpleness, if you will, to an extent, but yet recognizes that growth is real, growth is happening, and we could do well by projects like this. And it only works when we have very good partners. So again, I thank you for your interest and for, again, putting together this presentation. Secondly, it's personal to me because I live across the street. I live in the Pioneer Park condos. It's not a secret. And I was very intentional about where I wanted to purchase my first condo. I purchased my first condo in that building, and I'm now on my second condo, which is bigger, in that building. There was nowhere else that I wanted to buy and I was fortunate to do so right before I turned 30 years old a few years ago. And my intentionalism, if you will, for that building, wanting to buy into that building, is because I believe so much in the concept, right? Multi-use, and just the ease that comes with, in my, for where I live in a condo, but similarly, of course, to apartment homes. Having said that, I would like to know if, as we move along this path, if you intend to engage not only with the activity center, by which seniors are the most frequent who utilize the activity center, but also with the HOA for the condo, Pioneer Park condos. If not, I would encourage you to work with city staff to maybe partner in a way to share information about the project, and also what works for the neighborhood, right? Because now we're really building out the neighborhood and the block or blocks. Thirdly, I appreciate what you have put forward related to parking. And I am not someone who is advocating for more parking, but until we get to a point in our community, and Puyallup's not alone, where there are more options for different modes of transportation and better transit options, we will continue to see folks in their cars, and they will need places to park their cars. So I actually am not so much concerned with the parking as you've presented with the building, residential parking, but I am concerned, and this is not really for you all as developers with the project, but I think a conversation needs to be had of crosswalking the downtown parking study that we went through last year and approved and adopted, and how this development now will impact that study, the plan, and also the loss of parking downtown that we will now have because of this incredible development. You don't have to respond to that because I'm sure you're not parking experts. And certainly you have put in a good faith effort on what you would like to do to mitigate the loss of parking, and certainly ensuring that those that utilize the activity center continue to have adequate parking. But I am very much concerned about the parking infrastructure that we have in downtown Puyallup and what we will lose. I mean, this is the center of the universe, downtown Puyallup, and we are so fortunate to have such a vibrant downtown, particularly in this block, with all of the events that happen. And I really think that it is time that we, really start to be thoughtful about what we're going to do. So again, if nothing else, I want you to know how much I appreciate, again, your interest and investment in downtown Puyallup, and I look forward to seeing this come together. Thank you.
Thanks, I appreciate that. And just to respond to your earlier comment, I think we had talked about some kind of a community outreach meeting or neighborhood meeting, something. So I think that's gonna be in the works here in the forthcoming. So.
Okay, with that, Councilmember Dorr, please.
Thank you. I want to thank you also for your presentation, and I did have the opportunity to go with some of my colleagues to visit some of your properties and was very impressed. Clearly, I'm a different generation than my two younger colleagues there. So it's interesting to me to have to adapt to see what the new trends are. And I'm the most senior member on this council, and we have been trying for condos for years. And this story that you're telling us is the same story that we have heard. We clearly need housing units. We need people to support the businesses downtown. And my main concern has always been that we built a senior activity center there, and I would not support a project that did not take care of the seniors. So I'm very grateful that you guys are willing to accommodate that and work that into the plans. I would love to see this move forward to a public open house so we can solicit feedback from our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Whitting.
As most of my colleagues have said, I had the pleasure of touring your units down in Olympia and was quite impressed with your developments. I am confident that what you put in here will be of a similar quality. One thing that hasn't been mentioned is I noticed in one of those projects down there that you had the dog facility on the roof. Is that something planned for this project?
Yeah, well, I'm doing that on almost every new project, which is just a dog walk. My son and his fiance actually live in one of my units, and it's a big thing for them to, his soon-to-be wife can go up to the roof and take the dog to the bathroom without going to the street or the park, or it just feels safer. And so we're putting them in almost every new building. And they're a great amenity. It's just a, artificial turf fenced area. Sprinklers go off a couple times a day and water it down, but it's a nice thing for urban dwellers. So.
Yeah, I think it's a great amenity, and I'm pleased to hear that you'll put one in on our project. Thank you, and again, I look forward to moving forward with Urban Olympia. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for all the information tonight and great presentation. It was very soothing to listen to and very well put together. I appreciate that. But I too came down and toured your facilities and homes down there, and I just couldn't be more thrilled to have you guys come to Puyallup, and we might have to rebrand your company.
Yeah.
And
well, the entity we set up is called Urban Puyallup Mixed Use LLC. So that's who's going to sign the agreement. So we did do that.
Well, we welcome Urban Puyallup and the ideas that you brought forth, and I'm excited to see the studio apartments that are there to give an affordable opportunity for that building. It's a beautiful building, beautifully done, and I might have to call Trapper myself and have him give you a call. Yeah. But man, Renee, that would be something, wouldn't it? Yeah. I don't know. They might just rent out the whole place. It'll be packed. But well done. Thank you so much for your presentation, and hopefully we can make this a go.
Okay, thank you.
The mayor would like, seeing that there's no further discussion, the mayor would like to entertain a motion for the development of a development agreement to come before the council for approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
All right, with that, we have a conclusion for you, and we hope to see you further.
Okay, thanks everyone. Really
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is 6B, a contract extension with Multicare Health Systems to continue the designated crisis responder program. And Captain Greg Massey, if you could proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm going to have the deputy mayor step in my stead just for a couple minutes. So he'll proceed and he'll moderate this. Okay?
Wonderful. All right, we'll get started then. Again, thank you. This is, again, the Designated Crisis Responder Program, and for those that were in attendance last year in March, and we had Ashley, who was our Designated Crisis Responder, was here to present as well and gave a couple of items for the program. And so unfortunately she is unable to be here tonight to speak to this and give you a couple of examples of the program, but we'll get started. So the DCR, and what is it? If you can remember sometime back, the initiative 940, where we needed to look into some de-escalation, and with that de-escalation and mental health training, recognizing that we needed some mental health professionals to assist with law enforcement. And so in January of 2023, we were able to get Ashley, our designated crisis responder, embedded with the Puyallup Police Department and part of a mobile outreach program with multi-care. She's a great resource for us out in the field and in the jail. She responds to calls that are mental health and substance abuse disorder related, those that are in a mental health crisis. And so she is a self-responder. She responds to calls from South Sound 911. She responds to calls that our officers outreach are reaching out to her for, or involved in the jail as well. Our designated crisis responder is pretty unique within the county in the fact that she also responds to crisis within our jail. There are no other crisis responders in the county that do that in the other correctional facility, Pierce County Jail. So I won't read the last paragraph there of everything that she does, but definitely crisis intervention, some safety planning, some evaluations, some detentions, some placement, risk assessments, and then definitely some follow-up care with the families and the individuals. These are some numbers just to show for the last 6 or so months of what the designated crisis responder that we have has done. Those are some pretty outstanding numbers that we've had. You can see to the right-hand side there at the bottom the different types of calls or symptoms that people are experiencing that she helps the correctional facility and the patrol officers with. 567 with patrol, 106 with the jail, and then herself for working with a MOT in Pierce County, reaching out to. Face-to-faces, phone calls, and consults. All different types of outreach that she's doing. I mentioned a little bit in the jail, so not only is she embedded with the police officers out in the field, but she's also inside the jail, which is a very unique thing for her to do. There's an evaluation that's done if there's an individual that's incarcerated that is done for their mental health evaluation, and Ashley can come in, our designated crisis responder, and make a determination based on her evaluation if that person doesn't actually need to be in the jail, can they go to some other facility if they're experiencing some mental health crisis, or if they're a danger to themselves or they're a danger to others within the correctional facility, she can have them committed or placed in another facility. There are folks that come to our jail that claim to have some mental health crisis. Maybe they are, maybe they are not. She has access to the records through multi-care that we would not typically have, which is a truly something for us to be able to make that evaluation that we wouldn't normally have. Our option if she was not able to respond to the jail is what's called Optum Healthcare. Optum Healthcare is an on-call evaluation that they would do. Their response, unfortunately, is not timely for the area that they cover. So our DCR is a much rapid response, much more than Optum, which helps with the inmates that might be rapidly deteriorating in the jail, having to wait for that response. As far as the intervention out in the field, there are people out there that are experiencing mental health crisis. they are 911 calls that cause us to go out there and interface with them. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they need to be inside the jail, that the jail is not necessarily the best place for them to be. And so the asset that our DCR provides is to be able to make that evaluation and to find the best place for them and to be able to place them successfully. So right now, this is 2-year contracts that go on through Multicare. Previously, from January of 2023 and 24, we found AWC grants to be able to fund the program. Currently, here in 2025, we're working through WASPIC for a grant. It is in the process of being applied for, and we will consistently work to complete grants for this program. That is the intent. Every grant that we can find, we plan on applying for this program in order to keep it. I'll be entertaining any questions that you may have in regards to the program.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Captain, you mentioned some data on how many calls back from 2023, I think of August to present, and you listed some data there. Are those calls also included, because I did hear you mention Pierce County, are those calls totaling him or her going into Pierce County, or is that just strictly Puyallup only?
Strictly Puyallup.
That's quite a few.
It is.
For a small town, yeah. The one thing I thought that was interesting beyond just the field calls was the jail calls. I think that's a great time to get an assessment, if a person's incarcerated, to really come and assess and see what's going on while they're in that stable, kind of a secured environment. So I'm glad to see that he or she is involved in that too. So is City Manager, maybe I could ask you, is there a call to action on this by the council, looking for some approval on this?
Yes. So what we are seeking is that council would authorize the extension of the contract, which would go through the end of next year, so the end of 2026. That total cost is about $452,000 to continue it through the end of this next year. While we obviously have the AWC grant, those funds will be done this month. So we still have some left with the AWC to get us through this month. Beyond that, then it would really be in some salary savings. There are a couple vacancies in the department that they are actively filling. So once those are filled, then those salary savings would go away. The WASPIC grant, we will find out in June if we get that. And so if we get the WASPIC grant, then obviously that would cover it. But if not, then really long term, it would be challenging for us to continue this just on salary savings when those positions hopefully will be filled at some point this year.
Yeah.
So that is what we're seeking tonight.
Thank you, City Manager. Completed my thought process on this. I support it in concept, and I think it's wonderful service to provide for those who are hurting. I guess, and I think I remember this subject coming up, and so I think City Manager or others might be able to confirm. I think we at $450,000. Is that just for one particular person for the contract?
So that is for one particular person, and that number is for 2025 after this month and 2026. I know that that number is sounding large. That is also the way that Multicare predicts or estimates the annual number. And so, as the city manager mentioned, there was $41,000 from the last estimate that Multicare had said that was, I guess, over in excess of what they had thought. And so to give you just a couple of, it's their highest estimate. And so in that, if you break it down, they have an estimate of a $7,500 sign-on recruitment bonus that they put into that. Well, we already have somebody that's hired. They put in $5,000 of overtime. We managed to make sure that that number isn't reached. They have a $500 mileage, for instance, but we provide a city car. And so even though we've had numerous meetings with Multicare pointing these things out, that is the way that they estimate their annual budget for this particular person.
Captain, could you go back to the slide? I know you've got it pulled up.
Yep.
Can you go back to the slide that showed how many hours that this individual was putting in? And I'd like to just take a look at that. And then I'd like to hear from Councilmember Whitting on this. I know he's got some financial background and want to make sure that we're being good stewards of that. And so this is for roughly, it looks like, what, a year and a half-ish or something like that?
This is for, well, it would be the April through the rest of this year in 2026.
August 2023 to current.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The numbers you're talking
These numbers,
about. Yes.
Yeah.
And one other thing I just want to add is there is also a supervisory component. Multi-Care has a person who supervises, much like our hotel pilot project with Catholic Community Services. So there is a component in there where they have, because she is a DCR, a current DCR, they have to be supervised by a professional staff that's not a city staff member. So part of that budget is their supervisory person.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'd sure like to weigh in. I mean, I support the concept, and I suspect this is the going rate for $450,000 for an annual cost for one staff member to assess mental health. I don't know what the margin is for what the hospital is, getting from that too. It just seemed a little high to me for one particular individual. That's certainly important, but I'm having a struggle with it. So I'd like to hear some other feedback that would help me justify supporting $450,000 for 1 year, for 2 years.
So it's a year and 3/4, I guess, if you will.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'd love to hear some feedback on that. I'm just, it seems like it's a little high, but again, I support it in concept. I just want to make sure that we're, being wise with taxpayers' money. And some could say, well, sure, it's grants, but it's somebody's tax money, right? And so somebody's paying for it. And we're all paying for it. And some, even if we're not directly paying for it through our salaries, some taxpayers paying for it. So I'd love to just get some feedback on that. Maybe I could be rest assured, but it does seem like it's a little bit high for one individual for a year and a half or whatever. Thank you.
Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Captain Massey, for your presentation. I do have some questions on this. So Pierce County has DCR services that are available to the city of Puyallup. I do not recall how many. Do you know how many Pierce County has?
So they have a grant for 9 total, and they have 6 currently.
Okay. And so when with this fund balance or multi-care budgeting this at the highest amount, are we paying, I don't quite understand that. Are we paying per hour? This is a straight contract rate for this person. What is included in the dollar amount?
So the dollar amount.
I heard the supervisor. I'm sorry. I heard City Manager Kirkley say that there was the supervisor capacity as well.
So there's a supervisor salary and benefits. There's a DCR salary and benefits. There's some overtime. They throw in a sign-on bonus or a recruitment bonus. There's a cell subscription, licenses, training, education, mileage, supplies, malpractice, business insurance, and then professional services fees and indirect expenses. Those are their line items that they create their annual budget for. So in 2025, with that savings, if you will, that we $41,000, we'd be looking at $185 for 2025, and the estimated cost for 2026 is $266,000 for that grand total that 400 and I can't remember exactly what it was off the top of my head.
Okay, so my biggest concern with this is that we did not budget these funds. It's fund balance, and in the next budget cycle, where are we going to come up with this money? But I do think it is a good program. I'm interested when you say that they're dispatched from 911. Do we have a number of how many are dispatched and why so 911 has the 988 crisis counselor on the dispatch floor. So what if they're not identifying as a mental health, no action or no plan, no weapon, that type of call, what is resulting in them getting dispatched? Because if it was a mental health, if it was presenting as a mental health crisis or suicide with no plan, you know the words better than I do, but no plan, no weapon, they would get transferred to crisis counselor. So what are we missing here that it's causing them to be dispatched?
So most of the dispatch from South Sound 911, it is a minimal number. I will tell you, since 988 has started, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too far, but we're only seeing for the city of Puyallup 2 to 3 988 calls, and so that's a different animal as to why that number may be so low. The calls that you're referring to that are no harm calls, as you refer to them, those actually might come through the MOC first. And are what would be considered a referral. Maybe it's a family member that's needing some outreach in the city of Puyallup. And so then the MOC is calling our DCR and saying, hey, can you call this resident? Can you outreach to that family and see what's going on with them? So it may not be our officer that's out in the field. It may not be the jail that's calling. But it could be something that the Pierce County MOC is asking Ashley to reach out to, our DCR to reach out to in the city of Puyallup.
And I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that term. What does that mean, MOC?
The mobile outreach crisis team.
Okay. So do we have any numbers? I know that previously we had to use Pierce County's DCR, and I know that that's not the best use of officer time because there's often a delay in getting the DCR to the call that you need. But do we have numbers contrasted this type of data from when we had to use Pierce County versus with our own DCR?
I don't have them tonight. We did have those numbers when we first asked for the DCR program, how many of those we were using, and the time frame that it was causing us to have to be delayed, just like you mentioned. So that is data that if you need that, Councilmember Dorr, we can get. I don't have them tonight.
Yeah, I'm just interested in seeing, because like I said, this is an unbudgeted amount, and we've done raised some rates and done some other things in the last budget cycle. And it's not that I don't support the program. I want to know ongoing where this money is going to come from, because we did it as a pilot program when we had the grants. But this is going to turn into a very real budgeted item, and I'm not sure, given the budget forecast that we've had, that is my only concern. I think it's a great program. I appreciate that you guys are doing it. I just don't know where we're going to get the money ongoing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. A couple things. I appreciate Councilmember Johnson and his sensitivity to the cost, and I appreciate Councilmember Dorr's sensitivity the same. I think that I am currently landing there. To be very frank, I frankly am frustrated that this is coming before us now with less than a month or a month left in the funding, the grant funding to support this position. I do support the position, and I think that DCR is incredibly important. And I really do not want to see this go away. But I am a little bit frustrated that this seems to come a little hasty and at the last minute, and therefore we now, we'll have to look at using general funds to cover this, which, as mentioned, was not included in our budget. Having said that, my concerns again and my frustration is not reflective on the program itself. Can you tell me when we knew that the funds were going to run out?
I don't have an exact month for you, but we've known prior to this. It's been, I think that grant ended, or we knew that grant was going to end probably towards the end of summer of last year.
Okay, so thank you. One of the other things that I'm thinking about this is where we go from here, right? So let's say we fund this out of the general fund, we move forward, but what's next, right? What are we going to do in the future? Does it become a budgeted item? Do we go, through that process and make hard decisions as we have been? But that will be a conversation warranted when we get there. However, there are very many opportunities that exist at the federal and hopefully state level where we may be able to access some funding to support this program. Councilmember Dorr and I are in Washington, D.C. reporting live right now, attending the National League of Cities Congressional Legislative Conference. We've been on the Hill today meeting with both of our U.S. Senators' offices talking about this program, talking with our new federal lobbyist about this program and what programs may exist to help us fund this into the future. The good news is that some programs, despite what we're hearing in the media about government funding and programming, et cetera, does exist. And there is signals from the current administration that these programs and the funding opportunities will continue to be supported. There's also a Senate bill making its way through the process in the state legislature that would create a pretty big grant funding opportunity for positions like this. That bill's fate will be decided by tomorrow because of where we are in the legislative session and different cutoff dates. And so I say all of this to say that there are opportunities out there that exist to support and perhaps even expand this program that I think we could get really serious on, and that, could help us moving forward. But, I remain very frustrated that this is coming together with a short runway, because I know that myself and my colleagues here, certainly take taxpayer dollars and resources incredibly seriously and are ultra sensitive to our budgetary situation at present. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castro. After hearing all the comments from my colleagues tonight, it sounds like we need some form of direction, so I'm going to throw an idea out there and see how it lands with my team. I recommend that if I heard City Manager Kirkley earlier clearly, we have 1 month left in this grant. Then we have some gaps to fill hiring-wise with the team, and we're hopefully going to hear in June a positive report that we're going to continue on through another grant that we're hoping to get in June. So the idea I'd like to throw out there for the team to consider is keep the DCR going, and then in June we'll decide its fate, in essence, if we get that grant or not. Because it doesn't sound like we have the ability currently to just carry the weight of that position in our current budget. So I'd like to put a motion on the table.
One technical point.
Thank you.
Officer Massey, Captain, is such an arrangement acceptable, do you think, to multi-care? I mean, would they contract for such a short-term basis? Because that's what she's recommending.
I'm not sure that I can answer that question for multi-care right now. I think that's a proposal that we'd have to present to them as well.
I have a question for you, and I'm not, that's still on the table, by the way. It has been seconded, but it's still, I want to keep it there.
I'll second it.
Okay, now it's on the table. Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. We're now in the discussion phase, which I would like to entertain. I think the police department, I am very familiar with when you get grants and you go with the program, and then those grants end, there's always a decision as to whether something is worthy to continue. And of course, we're looking at outcomes in Puyallup, the safety outcomes. And of course, I'm always doing kind of a comparative advantage situation where I'm looking at roughly $500,000, and could I spend that some other place and get a net worth that would be better, public safety wise, out of that. And I'd like to use your judgment on the value of this program. And it is an expenditure, but I don't think it's that it's not that outside the realm for us to spend the kind of money for what we're getting for a year and 3/4. This is basically 2 years. We're darn near close to 2 years. So you kind of pontificate a little bit about that, the value that this gives to the police department overall.
I'd say the value for not just the police department, Mayor, but for the citizens that are in the city of Puyallup that are experiencing mental crisis or that are experiencing some drug addiction, and we spoke what's best for them without crisis response, without mental health evaluation. It was. In the past, if you've committed a would-be crime, you went to jail. Now we have someone that is able to do mental health evaluations, that is able to stand side by side with the police or in the correctional facility and make evaluations on what is the best place and what is the placement for folks to get the help that they actually need to be successful.
Sounds like a fairly efficient use of resources. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, I failed to mention or share that it's my understanding, and Mr. Mayor, you might know better at this point, Pierce Transit recently launched this same program, and they were able to begin the program. They contract with Multicare because they too have acquired some grant funding. Given Puyallup Police and the relationship, excuse me, that we have with Pierce Transit and the transit officer, I only highlight this to see if there's something there or a conversation that can be had there, especially related to the proposal made by Councilmember Gilliam and the short-term contract. So I just wanted to highlight that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we have a proposal before us at this point, and just so that I have this correct, that we continue funding. The proposal is we continue funding this contract with Multicare through June of this year, at which time, well, why don't we just say July 1st, until July 1st, at which point we will come back to the council for a further decision as to whether it will continue. And frankly, there may be grants coming at that point, there may not. So we have to just make a decision. But we continue funding to July 1st. Councilmember Whitting, you've got a thumb, I assume that. Okay, we already have a second on it. You're going to get a chance to give your final approval of this. Councilmember Johnson, Oh, excuse me, Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Whitting.
Yes, I'd like to direct a question to City Manager Kirkley. First off, you're bringing this forward without a guarantee of funding going forward. In your estimation, if we were to pursue this without further funding, could you make adjustments to our budget and make budget adjustments that would accommodate this if necessary?
So in the short term, what Councilmember Gilliam was saying, I certainly think we probably could do that in the short term. We can talk to Multicare. Can't speak for Multicare, as the captain said. We would need to discuss it with them to see. I would imagine they would give us that time, but again, we would need to reach out to them. Beyond that, so there are 2 vacancies right now in the police department. Those vacancies in the patrol, those individuals are moving through the process pretty quickly. And so those eventually would be filled, but we know of 2 impending retirements. So that's why I say over the next few months, we think we can make it through with the salary savings. Beyond that, Councilmember Whitting, I do not know. It would be very difficult for us to sit here and say that we could patch it together for the next year and a half. And so that's why we're bringing it forward. There's Tier 3. As you know, there's Tier 3 funding. There's about $1.5 million currently unallocated in Tier 3 after you set aside funding for the jail remodel, the teen zone, and the signal box art wrap. So there is some unallocated Tier 3 that is sitting there and available. So at this point, that's where, beyond the June stop gap, assuming Multicare goes with that, that's what we have to look at.
Councilmember Whitting, are you through?
Yes, I believe so. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. I just have a quick question. I'm leaning towards supporting the motion. But City Manager Kirkley, when we did the budget, part of the request was of reductions from the staff level were this same thing. Unfilled positions was part of the way in which you were able to come up with that money. It feels like we're spending unfilled positions multiple times. Can you remind me how you came up with that $700 and I don't remember the exact amount, $1,000 that the council had asked for cuts?
Yeah, so those positions are actually eliminated. So those positions were eliminated from the budget. These positions that I'm talking about tonight are budgeted positions that aren't filled. So they are positions that are in the budget, they just haven't been filled. The positions that were part of the biennial budget to support the public safety building and balance the budget were positions that were eliminated, so they are not in the budget anymore.
Okay, and so this $452,000, it does not have any of the vacancy savings in it. It is the full amount of the contract, correct?
Yes, and Captain Massey, are we billed by Multicare on a monthly basis?
Monthly.
So that I would just point that out, that is one thing, that this is the top end. It doesn't necessarily mean that the full 452 would be spent, but we put the top end just so that it was clear that this is the potential that it could be. It doesn't necessarily mean that we would reach that 452. I don't know if that, I just want to have that full information before you.
Okay, but that's back to my original question. We're not paying by the hour for this, correct? So there should be we're paying for a contract. This person resides within PPD, works out of that office. So the variable is still a little bit confusing to me when you say we're getting billed monthly. Why would that number change? I understand what Captain Massey said as far as sign-on bonuses and cell phones or whatever, but why is it different? Why is it not consistent dollar amount?
The primary, and Captain Massey, please speak to it. You know more than I do, but I am going to just mention some of it is they factor in potential overtime that may or may not be used. Like Captain Massey said, the sign-on bonus recruitment, that would not be needed unless Officer Cochran decided to leave.
And so those are the two primary, and then there's some training and education. So there's not a lot of variable, Councilmember Dorr. There's not much. It's pretty de minimis. So I think, that's why I would say we should use that larger number.
I think where you're going to see it is at the end of that. At the end of that year, the projected costs that aren't used is where you're going to see that total number. Hey, we said it was going to be $250,000. It's actually $210,000 because there was no, for instance, like I had mentioned, there was no sign-on bonus used. We didn't actually use $500 for this or $7,500 for that. So we're going to see the monthly bill be pretty close to the same. At the end of the year, these are what was not spent.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor King.
Maybe you have, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe you touched on this. I just want to, and I don't think you did, but maybe you did. The amount that was paid in the previous year, do we have that number?
$133 and $270, so $133,000 and $270,000 is what I have for you to kind of answer that question from the previous grants.
So $133,000.
The first year was $133. The second was $270.
What was the biggest increase in cost? I guess why did it go from $133 to $270?
The time that we started in the year.
Gotcha. That was my only question. I have nothing else right now.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this amendment. I think it's the wise thing to do. That by that time we'll know if the grant funding is there, and we can, and if let's just say it's there, it's a no-brainer. We probably just move it right on through. If it's not there, we would need to take a hard look. Do we want to continue to fund it through existing budget? I would like to just put it out there. This is not an official friendly amendment to the motion. Let's say the motion passes, which it sounds like there's some support based off of comments unofficially. But would there be any interest on the council if we had a friendly amendment that if we bring this back in July 1st to reevaluate based off of grant funding, would it also be wise to have staff look at other options, like other healthcare facilities who might be able to contract for a similar position at a better contracted rate, or to see if staff could identify other contract co-op mental health folks that could fund that? At least, again, that would be like by the way, we're also checking too. Would that be something that the council may have interest in while we're waiting until July to see if there's other options? This being our first primary option, but at least seeing if there's other options for services that might be just as effective, but maybe more financially cost savings.
I don't want to belabor this, but Captain Massey, what is the RFP process for these services? Is there an actual RFP that is put out to service providers?
I think, and we'll follow up on this, but I believe that for the DCR program, there's a provision in law that says Pierce County decides who we can use, and MultiCare is the entity for the DCR services. So it's very limited in terms of a DCR. Now there's other services that you can use, social worker services, et cetera. But I think we might be, but we'll follow up and look at that to see.
Yeah,
I think I'm certainly not saying not to do that, Mayor, Councilmember Johnson. I think like the city manager just said, they're unique in the ability in that law that gives them the ability to place and to hold in the hospital and these other facilities that some of your suggestions may not. So it's some of their unique capabilities.
Well, then how about this? I'm cueing staff and you without an official friendly amendment that we move forward with the amendment, just as stated by Gilliam, and I seconded, But I would like staff unofficially to be pursuing, are there other options that we should be considering between now and then unofficially, and just to bring it back to us if something is found. If not, then we'll move forward with reconsideration. But I think that should be on the table unofficially, and I trust that staff will make sure that they take a look at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. With that, I believe we've kind of exhausted conversation regarding this. Let's bring it to a vote. The amendment is, or excuse me, the motion is to fund the current proposal until July 1st, at which time we will reevaluate the program based on additional funding or not. So all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, motion does pass. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's move on to number 7, an ordinance, the 7A Puyallup 2044 Comprehensive Plan Periodic Update Ordinance. And we have Senior Planner Kendall Walls will give us a presentation.
Yes, thank you. Kendall Walls with the Development and Permitting Services Department, and we are back before you this evening for first reading of an ordinance to approve the Puyallup 2044 Comprehensive Plan Periodic Update Package. I have a presentation to kind of give a brief overview of kind of more recent events that have occurred in the process, as well as to walk through the alternative amendments that were presented for council consideration at the public hearing, and then touch on next steps. So for project status, as a reminder, the Planning Commission held a hearing and deliberated on the draft plan in December and provided a recommendation of approval with several amendments. In January, on January 28th, we held a public hearing with council where we presented an overview of the draft plan, which included the Planning Commission's recommended amendments. And then we also included those staff amendments, which we'll walk through in this presentation. In February, the agency, the required 60-day comment period expired, and we did receive 2 comment letters, one from the Department of Commerce, which was more formal comments. They had previously provided initial comments that were provided in your January public hearing packet, but we received more formal comments. They largely were the same comments that we received in January. There were a couple of additional amendments that we did not, or sorry, a couple of additional comments that we did not find were necessary to address at this time. We also received a comment letter from Puget Sound Regional Council, or PSRC, which included several suggested changes, but similarly, we found that those suggested changes are likely not to impact certification, so we are not presenting any new amendments regarding that comment letter, and we will look to addressing those comments at a future annual amendment cycle. We did want to note that we received a comment letter from WashDOT in the last few days that staff is currently reviewing and determining the necessary approach for addressing those comments. If we find that an amendment is necessary, then we will bring that back before you at second reading. But at this point, we're not presenting additional amendments. And then tonight, March, we're here for that first ordinance reading, and then we'll again walk through those alternative amendments.
Kendall, just so you know, the plan this evening is that you give your presentation and you go over the amendments for consideration. At that time, I do want to open it to all the members who have also come forward with amendments. I know Councilmember Whitting has some amendments that all the members have received, and then I have some amendments too. at which time we'll go through and just explain all the amendments before we put forward any kind of motion for first reading, for adoption, et cetera. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kent, I just wanted to follow up just so I understand. So and this is just very general, but just it's all it needs to be is general at this point. The process with the Planning Commission brought it to fruition to this kind of, let's call it raw, rough draft or pretty polished draft in terms of internal city, view that includes staff advising and so forth being on that. But after that, or at least when that was presented to other entities, what were those other entities that weighed in on this? You said PS, what is it?
PSRC, Puget Sound Regional
PSRC, and then what was the other one?
The Department of Commerce.
Department of Commerce.
The Department of Natural Resources also commented, and then we've received comments from WashDOT as well.
Yeah, so at least 4 kind of one regional and several state and a federal, right? So hypothetical in the scenario of that, let's just say a city, like Puyallup, comes up with a comprehensive plan and we submit it, and these agencies give their comments. Are those optional for the city council to adopt, or is this just kind of a token deal when they comment that hey, according to our big brother oversight, you must include this in there? I'd like to know the parameters of what our local rights are as elected officials representing a local body of residents that we have been duly elected to oversee, versus comments by good intention, state, federal agencies, county agencies. Is that required most of the time, or is it optional recommendations? In other words, are we going through the motion of adopting something that we're kind of forced to anyway?
So there are some comments that we received that we are not addressing because they didn't align with our goals for the comprehensive plan update, for streamlining and simplifying, or they were comments that we didn't think needed to be addressed at this time, but we could consider at a future annual amendment cycle. There are about 3 amendments that staff had identified in completing the checklist, which is used for ensuring that we are complying with GMA, and that those were items that we overlooked, and so those were ones that staff had brought forward at the public hearing, just more so referencing existing documents that we have. And then there are some recommendations from the Department of Commerce, ensuring that what we have provided in our plan will be compliant with the Growth Management Act.
Okay. So it sounds like in the process that we're set up now is, again, the process of local government planning commission appointed by the council, was elected by the people of that region, went through the process of producing this rough document. It was sent out to these other agencies for review. They give comments, and you even use the word recommendations. So it's not like they put a ink in there and said, no, you have to include this. It's basically we recommend. But recommendation is recommendation. I suppose a local body could say, hey, we don't believe this is necessary. I mean, right? And so the screening, it sounds like, for this, from what I can tell at this point, is staff discerned these recommendations or comments from entities and decided what would be appropriate to put in and what not. And so council is kind of, in a sense, out of the loop a little bit on that, but it's filtered kind of through the trust of staff to determine what would be applicable to us or what's not applicable. Is that fair?
We did provide the agency comments that we've received, and we did outline, what those changes are that we are presenting to go forward.
Before it was included, I mean, you said that the council was provided that before it was included in the language of the draft?
So we have these amendments presented as track changes in the final draft that were presented at the public hearing.
Yeah.
So it was true, in fact, that staff took a look at the comments that we received and drafted potential amendments to address them, and used some discernment as to which ones seemed needed to be maybe areas that needed to be beefed up in the plan to ensure consistency with GMA, or what other factors there may be. But largely the intent is just to ensure that we're compliant with the state requirements.
Yeah, I get the word compliant. I guess, unless it's super critically obvious, and I can't imagine that the development of the Planning Commission would produce a proposal or a rough draft that would be completely out of compliance. I think there would have been enough discussion in that. So I would find it interesting that we would be out of compliance. So anyway, I'm just kind of curious on how we got there, and I'd like to entertain, if it truly we did discover that maybe there is a better process that council could be involved, at least at high levels of information before it's included in a draft. It might be a good idea for us to at least be aware of it, even through internal emails, before it comes to implementation, or at least presented before us. Because it's always easier to move it forward without having to back up. So I like to keep it moving forward, consistency, instead of to back up and reverse and make changes and move it forward again. So anyway, thanks for educating me. It helps me understand it. And I don't have a problem with it. I'm just trying to understand the process. And then if the process we find out in time is less than ideal, that we have a chance to modify the process so that we're all on the same page. So thank you, Kendall.
Keep in mind that on this chart, you may well have these 4 different arrows, and at the end, you have this sort of finality, and that's not really true, is that at that point, we can make all of those changes. This is just part of the process, but that's pretty big, because at that point, they're looking for council approval, and which we can provide amendments, we can modify it. There are many things that we can do to our own discretion. So it's not a bad process. It went through the Planning Commission, and then it comes to us, and it's the buck, stops here. And we are the ones that can take as much discretion as we would like. And we're frankly in no hurry. If there's a need for us to take more time, we can ask for extensions. And I predict that of the 50 that are out there, approximately our size, a good deal of them will get extensions.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, follow up just to continue my point on this. I agree with you. I'm not saying the process is flawed. I just from my personal perspective, I just have a little bit of suspect from large oversight agencies who I think with good intentions want to comment on what they think should be recommended to include. So I would like to have the council briefed on those comments before on major things before staff includes them kind of publicly, that we can at least be aware of it. So it's not a big deal, but I think local government is the best government because it's the closest to the people, and we know best on kind of what's best for our community. So that's my thoughts on that.
We're going to get briefed on those tonight, by the way.
Thank you.
So Councilmember Adler.
Thank you. Just very quickly, Kendall, can you clarify that the comments, amendments that were put forward related to the agencies are state agencies, not federal?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, please proceed.
Okay. So just for an overview of those amendments, as we mentioned, the Planning Commission did recommend a number of amendments to the plan, and those were incorporated in the final draft that was presented to the council at the public hearing. And then again, these staff alternative amendments do appear in track changes in the final document. There are 14 amendments outlined in the table that was provided in your packet. I do want to note that I noticed that we failed to include 2 of the track change sections in the transportation element in the table and in this presentation. So I will touch on those when we get to the transportation element slide. So I apologize for that oversight or that mistake. But we are presenting in this presentation the amendments that we are recommending for approval for council. As mentioned, these amendments primarily are to address agency comments, but there are some that were staff recommendations, and so we'll identify those as we walk through. So for the First Amendment, and these are kind of organized by elements, these amendments touch the foundations element, natural environment, land use, housing, and transportation. So Amendment 1 is to the foundations element. This was one that staff identified when finalizing the compliance checklist that Commerce provides for jurisdictions to use when we submit our plans. And it has to do with tribal participation in planning. It specifically talks about referencing a memorandum of agreement between local governments and tribes, which the city has an existing agreement with the Puyallup tribe that's associated with the Lands Claim Settlement Agreement of 1990. So that was adding a description of that to the foundations element, and this is one that staff is, again, recommending for approval. The next amendment, Amendment 2, is for the foundations element. This was from a comment that we received from the Department of Commerce, and they were noting that there was a lack of description on efforts that were made to engage vulnerable and overburdened communities as part of our periodic update. We did address that in an appendices to the comprehensive plan, but it was advised that we provide more detail in the element itself for compliance with the state law requirements. So we did draft some language to that effect, and that is provided again in track changes in the element, and staff is recommending approval. The next amendment, Amendment 3, is touches on the foundations element and natural environment element. The Department of Natural Resources provided comments related to making sure that we're providing document references or examples in certain areas, as well as some general copy edits, and those suggested changes were included or incorporated as we saw that it aligned with the city's goals for the periodic update. So that, again, is one that we're recommending. Amendment 4 has to do with the housing element. This was one that came from comments from the Department of Commerce. Similarly to the one for the foundations element, they're suggesting that we include discussion of the barriers to developing affordable housing in Puyallup within the element itself, and not relying on information that we had provided in the appendix. So we have drafted language to provide a summary of that information in the element itself to ensure that we're compliant with the requirements. Amendment 5 is another similar comment from the Department of Commerce related to housing equity and displacement risk. We had, again, some of this information in the appendix to the comprehensive plan, but recommendation was to include more discussion within the element itself. So we did propose a new section that's titled Disparate Impacts and Displacement Risk. So that was another that was provided in track changes in the housing element.
I have a question regarding that. I heard in public testimony, and I did read the appendix, that there was maybe a correlation but no causation. In other words, and I'm reading the statute here, the statute does say that you have to identify and implement policies and regulations that have caused displacement, et cetera, caused by housing policies, plans, and actions. And my question is I've looked in the appendix or appendices, whatever you want to call them, and I could not find any causation. I mean, it could be a correlation, could be anything. So I'm not sure how that argument is made.
I'm not.
Well, we'll revisit this because when we bring all the amendments forward, we'll be discussing them.
We can take a look at that.
Yeah. Again, there's no causation. Anyway, proceed.
Okay. Okay. So this next one is also for the housing element. Another comment that we received from the Department of Commerce. We do have a specific requirement that we need to show that we can accommodate 458 beds for emergency housing. They noted that the city has not demonstrated that we have sufficient occupancy and spacing for emergency housing. This is more of a zoning code change that needs to be implemented to ensure that we can accommodate that number of emergency housing units, which we have included a description of in the element that the city will be working on code amendments to address this issue, and that is what the...
I have a question regarding that too. I found your description overly prescriptive, and again, we'll get into the debate. As opposed to a policy statement, it was extremely explicit about particular zones and expanding within those zones. We may come up with another solution to accommodate that. So it was highly prescriptive. But again, if you have some sort of analysis of that, I would welcome that, or further description. But it's, again, out of character and highly prescriptive in a document like this.
Right. We have noted that for this one in particular, the way the code is currently set up, it essentially really limits the number of these types of uses and doesn't allow us to meet those numbers. And as part of the state requirements this round, we have to demonstrate that we can accommodate housing for different levels of income as well as these emergency housing units. So that is why it is a bit more prescriptive to ensure that we are meeting those requirements.
We just may have different prescriptions, that's all.
Okay.
So go ahead.
This next amendment, Amendment 8, has to do with the future land use map for the land use that's in the land use element. This amendment was originated by city staff recommendation. The Washington State Fair originally requested some map changes for about 20 parcels that they own near the outer boundaries of the existing fairgrounds. They were kind of considered to be mostly cleanup items to change the existing property designations that vary from different residential designations to commercial, and redesignated those to the fair land use to recognize their ownership of those properties. And during the process, Planning Commission ultimately recommended postponing this request. They had concerns about some existing zoning provisions, one in particular that had to do with off-street parking allowance within 2,000 feet of the fair designation, or the fair zone, I should say. And so their concern is that by continuing to expand that land use and in the future that would be the zone, that is kind of further extending those parking allowances farther out into the community. This is something that we have talked about with the representatives from the Washington State Fair, and they have provided a letter saying that they are committed to working with staff regarding zoning code revisions. So staff is presenting this for council consideration for a map amendment as part of the periodic update process. We have concerns just about postponing it with the staff's work plan that we have moving forward with the number of code amendments we're already going to be working on, and just the timing of the next amendment cycle that the fair would be able to apply due to the delay in the periodic update that would put it into the 2026 amendment cycle. We feel that we should be able to deal with these zoning code concerns as part of the code update that we're doing this year. And ultimately, council can postpone implementing changes to the zoning map for these properties until the zoning code is brought up to meet and address those concerns. So staff is recommending that and I can have a map here on the next slide, that these parcels that are shown with the 6A that are kind of this violet lavender color would move forward for a map amendment to the fair designation. The ones here that are shown in yellow were recommended by the Planning Commission as they currently have the fair designation, but they are owned privately by other ownership. So it's being recommended that those change to a low density residential designation. Amendment 9 has to do with the future land use map as well in the land use element. This was also one that staff is recommending, and it has to do with the South Hill Business and Technology Center properties. They had requested through the EIS process that their property along 39th Avenue Southeast have more flexibility in uses. And so through working with them, we have proposed a mixed-use commercial designation on the southern portion of the property that is along 39th Avenue Southeast. And through the process, they had requested that we reduce the boundary. However, we had kind of just a misunderstanding of the exact location, and they are supportive of a change to align this mixed-use commercial designation with an existing parcel line here so that we reduce the number of split designated parcels. So it is a small shift to adjust the MUC boundary slightly north. Amendment 11 has to do with the natural environment element. This was one that staff identified through completion of the commerce compliance checklist, and it's adding a reference to the city's adopted 2023 Shoreline Master Program. And so that was provided in track changes in the document. Another amendment 12 to the natural environment element was a comment that we received from the Department of Natural Resources. It has to do with geologically hazardous areas. There were some suggestions about noting which geological hazards are found in Puyallup and provide clear reference in our maps. We already had maps there, but we just didn't have great tie into the maps that were existing in the plan. And also suggested adding a paragraph specific to volcanic and lahar inundation. So those have been provided as track changes in the element, and we are recommending approval. And then lastly, the transportation element, Amendment 13. This is another one that staff noticed from final completion of the checklist. It was adding a new section to recognize the city's 2018 adopted ADA Transition Plan, ADA standing for Americans with Disabilities Act, which is a requirement for transportation. So we're adding a description and also referencing that plan as an appendix to the comprehensive plan. The other two that I wanted to note were on page 7-35 of the plan. There was a description added about an updated summary of outreach that was completed as part of the process, and input that was received. Just due to the timing of the wrap up of the outreach that we did and going to the Planning Commission, we were not able to include that summary within the document. So that was one area, and that is shown in track changes already in your final transportation element document. The other, which is also shown in track changes on page 7-51 and continues on to 7-52, was a new addition of analysis that was done on impacts to state facilities. And this was something that we received a comment from WashDOT on the draft EIS, and so that was something that we had analyzed as part of the environmental review. So that was just bringing that additional detail into the plan itself. And again, that's provided in track changes in the element, and we're recommending approval for those two additional amendment areas as well. So then just to touch on next steps, again, we've held the public hearing. This is first reading, and we're anticipating second reading of the ordinance, which would be the adoption at sometime in April.
Thank you. Thank you, Kendall. Appreciate that. Now we're going to move on to the amendments that you have before you from Councilmember Whitting. If you would like to explain your amendments. Again, we're going through all the amendments. We have to see where everything is. Councilmember Johnson, just so you're aware, the presentation that Kendall just gave, there is a spreadsheet that I'd like for you to make physically available to members up here that they can look at, that goes through what you had just said and the origins of those amendments, the rationale, et cetera. So with that, let's move on to Councilmember Whitting. Would you like to go through your amendments?
Before I, excuse me, before I do so, I'd just like some clarification on what our process is going to look like here. Obviously, there's a bunch of amendments on the table. Are we going to if we do a first reading tonight, are we going to take action on those amendments?
We'll finish the process. We'll go as follows. We'll get all the amendments that we have out there. And then if a motion is made to go to the first reading, at that time, it will be on the table and ready for amendments. And then we can, at that time, select amendments to go on to that. And keep in mind that when all those amendments are exhausted, then we go for passage of first reading, okay? And then it would now go on to second reading, at which time a whole new slew of amendments can come forward. It is treated the way that we do things in the city of Puyallup is that we pass it out of first reading and then give, in this case, I will probably give it a month for the public to digest, to look at it and come forward with more amendments, and then we go into second reading. But keep in mind that just because we're in first reading doesn't mean we're going to pass it this evening. We could go into first reading, and then we could just table it till we meet, and I'll get the specific motion. Joe's working on that right now. We'll go into a motion that will set it aside, and then we'll resume it at another meeting, and then we'll continue to put amendments on it or pass it. But that's the process. So even though it is somewhat fluid, there are hard points that we have to follow through the process. Now, I believe it will take some time to do that. And I, frankly, considering this is a 20-year plan, or what is it, 20-year plan, that I'm okay with that. Other questions? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In follow-up to Councilmember Whitting's question about the process, and then Mr. Mayor, your explanation of it, I can tell you right up front, from my perspective, I want to hear the sponsor of each of these amendments go through line by line each amendment for consideration, and then allow opportunity for questions to happen before I even come close to wanting to insert it into a first draft. Because I mean, as you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, this is setting the tone for the next few decades, and we want to get it right. And so I would rather spend more time kind of going through the potential amendments, either to pass or to fail or to modify, than I would to be just kind of rush them on a first reading tonight. So I would like to hear everyone's amendment first, and then maybe take some action on additions to this particular proposal before us.
That's fine. And right now we are listening to the amendments. So with that, Councilmember Whitting, please proceed.
Could we have my amendments pulled up on the screen?
I'm not sure that's technically possible. I think we are unaware. You know what you can do? You can verbally state them. We have them. For people who are watching, you can just verbally state them, the point. And if there is something that is that crucial, they can always, rewatch it or whatever the case may be, take notes. But it is part of public record. Just anyone who is watching right now know that whatever Councilmember Whitting discusses is public record. We have a copy of it. If you request it from our clerk, they will get it to you pronto. So, but as to whether we have a presentation, unless staff has received one, Councilmember Whitting, there is no such presentation on the screen. But you have the floor.
Okay, I'm a little bit technology challenged here, being out of town, but I can walk through the amendments, but it would be helpful if they could be displayed. Is there a way to get those up, Kendall or Katie?
Excuse me, Councilman Whitting, can you ask the question one more time?
I was wondering if there was a way to get those my amendments on the screen. I was asking.
Oh,
Kendall.
I see. I'll tell you what we will do. I will go to my amendments, okay, and then we'll come back to your amendments. We'll see whether they technologically want to do that. I can just state mine verbally, and I believe everyone here has a copy of them. And I have a total, and by the way, I have a total of 7 amendments this evening. I may have more amendments in the future because we go into second reading. There may be more appropriate amendments at that time. So this is kind of the beginning of the process. But keep in mind, the process includes us finishing the first reading, moving on to the second reading. And there's many iterative processes in that, such as presenting amendments, et cetera. So with that, I'm going to present, I'll present 6 amendments, or let's see, 7 amendments. My first one is, I have to tell you, I've read all the testimony. I've read the comprehensive plan. I have gotten more piles of public testimony than, I care to read again. But nevertheless, I have read it, and I find some of it compelling by some that the language used could, in fact, set the city of Puyallup up for potential lawsuits. And in fact, I'm reading, the Wall Street Journal just came out with an article this last week that identified that there is just a plethora of reverse discrimination lawsuits coming down, and the Supreme Court will make a decision here very shortly that I think could lend itself to even more of those. So I think we have to be very cautious of the language we use, and we have to be very careful not to use anything that could be misconstrued as discriminatory. And I believe that much of the language in this falls within that category. So I have put together a comprehensive amendment that I would like to have put forward, and it goes as follows. Redraft the comprehensive plan, because there's too many instances, frankly. Redraft the comprehensive plan in alignment with the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Supreme Court decisions, presidential executive orders, and federal and state laws. Eliminate language that could potentially enter the city of Puyallup into litigation. And I think if you review the public testimony that has been taking place now for months, you will see that each one of these areas have been addressed time and time again, and I tend to look at many of those arguments as being valid. Now, I'm not an attorney. I was the vice chair of the Judiciary Committee in the State Senate for 2 years, so I've written many bills. I've done much legal analysis, and I've written probably anywhere from 100 to 200 bills, somewhere in that category at least. So I'm very used to the legalese in language, and I can tell you that I think throughout our comprehensive plan, I think we've been very careless. Or just when I was asking for causation, there's a correlation but no causation. I mean, these are not easy things. You just don't make these kind of statements without causation. And I find that the best thing to do was just to send it back and say, look at it through this lens. If you have to hire an attorney to do it, do it. But I do not want to put out a document that goes for 20 years that holds this city liable, especially what is coming down on a federal level, which I think there are funding opportunities or could be circumvented, but we could really face legal challenge. So that's my First Amendment. My second one is that I want to insert a new section outlining past activities and precautions the city of Puyallup has taken to mitigate and prepare for a lahar. Include at a minimum identifying relevant municipal codes, which we identify the hazard, the latest emergency evacuation exercise, which involved the evacuation of 45,000 children in March of 2024, the acquisition of and routine testing of lahar sirens throughout the Ording, Sumner, and Puyallup valleys, and the establishment of evacuation routes. That's at a minimum. And I'm using much of the testimony that the former Mayor Kathy Turner, and I suggest I have a verbatim testimony, again, all public record, but I suggest staff review that for a historical background to show that the city has been very cognizant of the fact that we do face hazards in Puyallup that are unique to other areas, and this will be very important in our comprehensive plan. My third amendment, oh, you can see them up on the board there. Thank you. Apparently I get visuals and Councilmember Winning doesn't. Hopefully that can be corrected. Under housing, insert under guiding principles the council's desire to create fee-simple housing options for our residents by creating compelling incentives. And the incentives are going to have to overcome much of what we just heard this evening of the undue costs of insurance due to litigation. And go on to say this is one way for residents of Puyallup to build wealth. And these options may take the form of single-unit housing or multi-family housing. I think that would be a very good amendment that for the next 20 years we kind of enshrine Councilmember Johnson's, adamant appeal that we have home ownership in this community and that we have to start putting our minds to anything we can to encourage that on a multi-unit and on a single-family housing. And then finally, amendment number 4, insert where appropriate under housing the task of creating a set of pre-approved housing designs that, if followed, ensure a faster, more predictable, and more efficient approval process. In addition, create housing exterior options in a visual format that assist individuals in understanding requirements so as to avoid the need to appear before the design review Commission, I hear time and time again how confused people are with what our standards should be, and they say that a visual way of representing that would be ideal. I don't know why we don't do it. It's our, where the buck stops here, folks. So I think this is a good policy. Amendment number 5 is to delete section 7.6 under land use. And what 7.6 says is it allows for small business in residential zones, but including home occupancy and smaller commercial retail. So it allows for that. I think it should be exempted because we're already studying what small businesses in our business nodes, neighborhood nodes, would be, but we already allow home occupation businesses in neighborhoods. What we don't allow is retail, and this opens it up to retail. And I know we allow commercial businesses because I had a consulting business for years in my neighborhood, and I had to file with the city. They had to say, how many people are coming to your house? 0, because I went to everybody else. How many trucks show up there? So I know we already allow small businesses to work out of their home. That's not a problem. What we don't allow is retail. And I think once you start that, you'll have vape shops, you'll have people buy homes, put neon signs. I've seen it happen in other states, in other communities, and you don't want that to happen. So I recommend this just be negated. Amendment number 6, there is a neighborhood commercial zone that we are interjecting near Maplewood without any community input. And it's pretty substantial. And I believe there has not, I asked if they've had a community meeting. There is no community meeting. But the actual neighbors themselves have not had an opportunity to provide input. And I think for right now, until we do that, we should keep it non-conforming, which means you have to utilize a conditional use permit. I believe that's what you have to do. And that does involve you going to all the neighborhoods. I just don't think we should infringe commercial in neighborhoods without talking to the neighborhoods and getting their input. And then number 7 is just a zoning change along Meridian. It's currently high-density residential along Meridian up the hill from the 15th to 23rd. Just along Meridian on both sides, I recommend we just go to mixed-use residential, or excuse me, not mixed-use residential. Well, maybe that it's mixed use. What is the one that allows commercial development? Mixed-use commercial. So that would do both residential and commercial. And that was from a recommendation that I received from someone that we need to make that more of a commercial strip and not just residential. So those are my recommendations.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question on that last one, if you don't mind, just for clarity.
Yes.
And maybe staff could help me. Is this corridor that the mayor is referring to from the base, let's just say where the fair is, all the way up to the top of South Hill? What does this incorporate?
That's it.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. And would this zoning allowance, because I think I've been a big proponent of this, I believe, if I'm on the same page, that would allow for maximum usage along that Meridian corridor, which is really kind of the jugular vein of connecting our two, regional growth centers together on I-5. So you could allow high density living, high density commercial. Would it also include additional hotels if that needed to be used? Because that is a corridor that the fair, is utilizing for guests coming in. We want our guests to be able to stay in Puyallup. So if that was zoned to include hotels, would this mixed use commercial allow for that as well?
Yes, I believe it would allow for those types of uses.
I just wanted to clarify. So I would support that. I've been saying that for years. I just think we need to connect those two, use the jugular vein, and let that be developed as private developers choose to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're going to move on to Councilmember Whitting, if you would like to go through your amendments.
Yes, and hopefully they found my amendments as well. Is that coming?
It is.
So just in terms of background, my amendments address a number of the issues that Mayor Castema's amendments similarly address. So we're looking at some of the same things. The objectives of my amendments are kind of twofold. One is, as we build out our city, we don't really have large plots of land any longer to develop. So a lot of our new construction is going to be infill kinds of projects. And when you get into infills, you've got to try and make the project work on the piece of property you've got to work with. And the nature of that suggests that we need to provide a little bit more flexibility to our developers in terms of some of our things. So my amendments seek to provide a little more flexibility. And then in addition, I think our code inadvertently discriminates in favor of ADUs based on the state mandates and discourages home ownership. So I've got I want to equalize that playing field. So the first thing there is just to add the words "or mitigation site areas." It required buffers adjacent to wetlands or mitigation site areas. So again, that just provides a little bit of flexibility. We want to protect our wetlands, but let's give the developers a little help if they can do something to mitigate the challenge. In the land use element, land use LU7, allow for increased middle housing density in select low-density residential areas with proximity to amenities such as commercial centers, transit corridors, or parks or open space. And our city has a lot of single-family residential and quite a bit of multi-family apartments, but we've got the missing middle that's been identified as a challenge, and I'm suggesting that we want to allow more middle housing density to some duplexes, some triplexes in areas that are appropriate to allow some increased density in residential areas so that we can preserve the character of those. We've got a number of different developments throughout the city that are very attractive neighborhoods, but they're not our single family residential character. So I think we would like to encourage some more of those kinds of developments. Next one is land use 7.71. Consider establishing increased middle housing allowances in low-density residential areas south of 31st Avenue Southwest. And there's a map adjustment that goes with that we'll see shortly. But that's specifically an area that I've mentioned in past meetings. There hasn't been much development along that corridor. There's some large plots that are suitable for development. And do we want to have them because of the need to put in curb and gutter kinds of work? It's going to be expensive to do, and so we'll either have big mansion houses, or if we increase the middle housing allowances in there, then we could have smaller homes with that are more affordable. So I wanted to target that area specifically. Add action item LU191, reevaluate the purpose and intent of residential uses in the rural buffer residential land use designation. We've got a bunch of areas within our city boundaries that carry the rural buffer residential land use designation that really don't buffer anything from anything. So I think we need to reevaluate that particular land use and and make sure it applies to the areas that where it's so designated. Moving on to the housing element, this gets into the affordability category. Just some language. Policies will also aim to increase home ownership attainable to as broad I'd like to add an A cross-section of the community using a range of tools and incentives. In order to do so, policies should promote fee-simple attached housing, e.g. townhomes and condominiums as affordable and sustainable options for residents, providing a middle ground between single-family detached homes and multifamily rentals. Policy should also encourage community partnerships to create fee-simple townhome demonstration projects and facilitate grant applications for state, federal funding for projects that promote attainable housing. So that's all about affordable home ownership. And again, I will reference both the mayor and the council member Johnson's comments on this particular topic. Moving on to 6, policy H 3.7, explore opportunities for expedited permit processing for unit lot subdivisions. So what's the rationale for that? With the new state regulations, we can put in ADUs and do those relatively quickly. So in a month or two, we could get a couple of joined ADUs approved through our permit process. But our short plot process takes considerably longer. And if we wanted to build 2 fee simple units that were physically identical to the 2 ADUs, it would take 6 months instead of 2 months. That means we're giving an unfair advantage to rental units at the expense of home ownership. And I think that's an issue that we need to work hard to overcome. Moving on to 7, add policy H 3.10, allow increased middle housing density in certain low density residential areas of the city subject to certain criteria. Criteria for consideration should include one or more of the following land development capacity, proximity to transportation and public transit corridors, commercial centers and services, and parks and other community amenities. Item 8, establish market incentives to encourage private sector development of affordable housing to all people who desire to live in the city, including low and moderate income households. Incentives may include reduced development fees, density bonuses, and other programs such as the multifamily tax exemption that apply to for sale attached housing. 9, can we scroll up? Thank you. Adopted objective design standards. This is another one that parallels the mayor's amendment to adopt objective design standards and procedures that encourage high quality construction, balance affordability and quality, and assure layouts that blend with surrounding single family and multi-family neighborhoods. Allow administrative review for projects that meet the design standards and require review board consideration of projects that do not meet the objective standards. Again, a desire to expedite the permitting process for good projects so that there isn't as much cost to the permitting process to developers so that they can deliver more affordable housing. And policy 9.4, I'm just suggesting that we change adopt design standards to consider standards for fee simple townhomes that encourage high quality construction, balance affordability and quality, and assure layouts that blend with surrounding single family and multifamily neighborhoods. Moving on to 11. Create traffic impact analysis guidelines to ensure, where practicable, when developers take on a project, sometimes we clearly want to build out our multimodal network gaps, but there's times where it may be practicable and sometimes where that may not be. So wanted to insert the words where practicable so that developers weren't subject to unpracticable requirements. And here's the land use map, and with the blue hash marks there down at the bottom left is the corridor I was talking about and have been talking about between Highway 512 and 31st Avenue. Again, it's a area that's only got a limited amount of development currently, and there's a big opportunity to develop there, and it's close to the South Hill Regional Growth Center and amenities that are present there. So I just think we do well to allow some more missing middle development in that area. There are already some duplexes there that I understand were permitted by the county before it was annexed to the city. I just think that it fits there and would be beneficial would allow some additional capacity for building some affordable homes. So those are my amendments.
Thank you, Councilmember Whitting. I appreciate you coming forward like this with these amendments and your explanation. They were very, very helpful. In fact, I'm going to review this video to go through them again. It's very important, and maybe we can integrate some of the amendments that I want to put forward in with these. So I'll be working with that, but I appreciate your explanation. At this point, we have heard, is there any other amendment that anyone has? Councilmember Johnson.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to comment on both of these amendment drafts. Before I do so, I'd like to affirm if there are any other amendments out there before I comment on them, because I do want to give some oversight. So I'll wait to see if there's any other amendments out there.
Now, keep in mind the fact that you have not brought forward amendment doesn't prevent you from doing so at the next meeting when we have to discuss this. And even if first reading, for example, we add on amendments and it passes, you still can come forward with amendments. This is a process, again, that has certain points that we have to go through, but in there are many iterations.
Okay.
So with that,
Councilmember
Johnson, I don't believe there are any.
Okay. Well, I'd like to make some comments. So first of all, I want to thank Councilmember Whitting and you, Mayor Castema, for spending some clear time on this. These are articulate, well thought through. I know this didn't just happen on a whim, and it really shows your dedication and deep dive into looking at this. So thank you both for doing that. With that in mind, as I'm kind of going through these, I kind of want to signal each of you, Councilmember Whitting, I want to signal some support. As you're reading through these, generally, in general sense, I'm open to consideration on a lot of it. I'm likely going to support many of them, and I'm very open to supporting many of them. So I think all of them seem reasonable. I'd like to study them more because this is the first time I've seen these tonight, in person. So I'd like to study them more before I'd be willing to support adding these amendments to our comprehensive plan. So I wanted to signal that. Mr. Mayor, looking at your 7 amendments, I support many of them, fully support several of them, and quite frankly, I highly respect you and love you as a community member, but I'm going to disagree with you on a couple of them heavily. So I want to make that known, and they're going to be on, Amendment 5 and 6. I'm just going to, you know that, and so I'm going to disagree with you on that, and I'm not prepared to do that tonight, but for the most part, I wanted to at least signal those are my thoughts, and I want to come back and give that some more thought as well. So with those amendments, overall, I think the majority of them I would get behind and support these amendments. The overwhelming majority of both of these submitted, which are about 18 amendments. This is the first time I've physically seen them tonight is, a few hours ago when these copies were submitted on the desk. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable and think it would be a little bit messy, maybe reckless or inefficient to try to insert these amendments at the first glance on a first reading. So I have some other thoughts I'd like to consider. The one that really stands out to me, Mr. Mayor, is your Amendment 1 about keeping in mind some of these, federal and state, precedents, the things that have been stated. And I'd like to, Mr. Mayor, with your consideration and counsel, I would like to make a motion that we convert Mr. Mayor's Amendment 1 only and convert that into a motion and send this draft back to staff in consultation with legal counsel for a complete redraft of the comprehensive plan with the appropriate verbiage that adheres to the protections and directions issued by the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Supreme Court rulings, the presidential executive orders, as well as federal and state laws. Once that redraft has been brought back utilizing this now motion number 1 that the mayor has brought forth, not an amendment anymore, once that redraft is brought back before us, then I think we can then adopt and make amendments, either adopt it or make amendments or reject it for further work. So that's my belief in moving forward. I think it's that to me is the core. If there are some legal vulnerabilities there, then I think that needs to go back to staff and getting legal counsel, even perhaps if we need to, additional counsel on that to make sure that verbiage reflects the Civil Rights Acts of 64 and these other things, and then bring it back for consideration of first reading. And at that time, we'll have more time to look at these various 18 amendments, and at that time, perhaps insert those amendments to this redrafted document based off of the now motion number 1 that the mayor has presented. So that's my motion, and I'd like council's thoughts and perhaps support on that motion on the desk today.
Okay, we have a motion before us.
I'd like a second.
And it's been seconded. Now let's move that to a discussion. Councilmember Whitting.
I'd just like to address a question to Attorney Beck. We currently live in a time where we seem to have a divergence between our federal government and our state government. And the state requires certain things, and the federal government appears to require just the opposite in some instances. Would you agree with that assessment?
That's a very loaded statement, council member. What I would say is there is definitely a disparity between executive orders from on the federal side and local law. At this point, federal law has not significantly diverged from what it was a few months ago. I think maybe the feeling of a divergence is made stronger based on some of the executive orders and things that have been tweeted over the last couple months.
Okay, so we have a state that is very firmly committed to the DEI arena, and And I'm just struggling with how do we I think some of what's come forth here about discrimination is reverse discrimination, and which would be in opposition to the whole DEI concept. So I'm not sure how to understand where our greatest exposure lies. Can you help me with that at all?
Not here.
I can't in open session. This is an executive session matter. My job is to advise the council on legal liabilities in this setting or with this issue, and I would not be comfortable advising on legal liabilities in open session.
Okay, thank you. That concludes my questions.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay.
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 We have, the vote is 4-3, I believe. Is that in question, though? Is it? Okay, you're a question. That's fine. Clerk, please roll call.
Councilmember Adler?
Nay.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor King?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilliam?
Aye.
Councilmember Whitting?
Nay.
Councilmember Dorr?
Nay.
Mayor Castema?
Aye. Okay, with that, we look forward to the work being done, and then I think we will, at that point, look forward to receiving the bill back, and then we will look at appropriate amendments at that time. With that, we're now going to move on. If there's no further discussion, we're now going to move on to the city manager's report. Steve Kirkley.
I have nothing. Thank you.
Okay. With that, we'll have council reports. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will reserve comments tonight for it is 1:01 a.m. where I am reporting live from in Washington, D.C., but I will assure you, Mr. Mayor, and our colleagues as well as the good people of Puyallup that Puyallup is very well represented at the National League of Cities annual Congressional Legislative Conference, and we have been having very fruitful conversations with our state delegation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Dorr.
I will just echo what Councilmember Adler said. We have had some very good discussions and prepared for a couple of more tomorrow, and it is 1:02 now, so I'm done.
You know, I had you go first, both of you, so you can say goodbye. Wish you the best back there. Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. I just wanted to say how proud I was for both proclamations that were brought forth tonight, honoring amazing artists in our community as well as the women of Puyallup. Also, I wanted to remind citizens that April 5th is the Daffodil Parade, so make sure you come out and bring your family. And with that, I'm going to say goodnight.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, there's some council meetings where, I can't speak for anybody else, but some council meetings where just the back of my neck is just like stress headache. And tonight's one of those. It's part of the joys of the job, but it's a good stress, right? Because that means that we're actually thinking, we're engaging, we're contemplating. You know, it's part. It's like when you're working out, you get sore, right? So mentally, there's some soreness here. But I do want to reiterate and kind of just drill down and thank you, Councilmember Whitting, for your work on these amendments. I would like to meet with you, maybe perhaps, and because I know that we're allowed to meet up to, I think, 3 without violating any Public Records Act. So I'd love to meet with you and drill down and find out how I can support you on some of these. And also, Mayor, I know that you've been working on this for a while. Although it's the first time I've actually seen the document tonight, I know that you've been working on this for a long time. So thank you for your leadership and for being here during this time to really make sure that we get this comprehensive plan right, not just right for development's sake, but right in terms of protecting our city from unnecessary tensions, rhetoric, or potential lawsuits. And I really appreciate that. It's not easy to do sometimes, but it's the right thing to do, and I appreciate your leadership on that. So other than that, thanks, Councilor Gilliam, for is it April, when is the April 5th coming up? I get that on my calendar, so look forward to that. Other than that, thanks. Appreciate it very much. Good night.
Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great amendments that have been brought forward tonight, and I look forward to working with both you, the mayor, and Councilmember Whitting on some of the amendments that both of you have brought forward, and looking for a possible connection on some of them that will help benefit our city. I'll keep it short. Looking forward to the daffodil parade. I got to get my dart throwing daffodil arm in the gym so that way I don't throw my shoulder out like I did last year. And that joke fell flat. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor King. I'll just conclude by Councilmember Whitting. I apologize. Sorry.
You deferred to my female colleagues in D.C., but I get no consideration since it's only 12:06 my time. I guess my jokes are falling flat too.
The audience is laughing their heads off, I promise.
So I just wanted to mention one thing. The Pierce County Council has commissioned a consultant to look at setting up a unified regional approach to dealing with homelessness in our county. This is the first time, I think, in history that there's an effort to make a countywide, take countywide steps to reducing and eliminating homelessness. And they had a presentation by the consultant that was hired, outfit called Uncommon Bridges, to pioneer that. There was a meeting that had a lot of electeds from around the county. I think that approach has merit. I don't know whether it will bring positive results or not, but I am attending those meetings. There's a number of upcoming meetings that I will attend. I was attending this one while I was in the airport TSA line, so it wasn't the best situation, but I intend to look at that and see if we can't find a way to deal with the homelessness epidemic that we've got going. And I will report back on that as time moves forward. If anybody is interested in learning more, I would be happy to share what I've learned so far with my colleagues and actually with the public as well. So that is my report.
Thank you. I'd just like to address a couple issues. First of all, I probably should have said something on the final vote for the motion that put forward that we have the comprehensive plan reviewed. Councilmember Whitting, I heard your remarks, and I think that we are talking about rights that Washingtonians do express. The 12th Amendment of our state constitution is very clear. We cannot discriminate against people based on class, based on race. We can't do that. 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution is just analogous to it. These are state issues too, and they're felt very deeply by the people of Washington State that we do not judge people based on immutable characteristics. And that's just not what we do. So whatever, acronym DEI that you put together, as long as it's not discriminating based on immutable characteristics and classes, then it is compatible. But I think that the problem is that it can lend itself to an interpretation, and therefore a plethora of lawsuits where we are so nebulous in our terminology that we fall easy prey to lawsuits. And I think we have to be very clear. And I think the U.S. Supreme Court, especially in the 2023 Students versus Harvard, have been very, very clear. And they're going to just get more definitive as we move down the line. And I just don't think it's an executive issue. In fact, it was Judge Roberts who said, you cannot solve discrimination through discrimination. And I think everybody here would agree with that. So I think we're alignment on these principles, but I think that enough evidence has come forward that this document is really askew of those types of both the 12th Amendment of the Washington State Constitution and the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and Supreme Court decisions. So I think that that there is plenty of grounds here for us to have this reevaluated before we have it come before us. And I don't think that our attorney could give you his interpretation, but I think we need to. There are very obvious interpretations when you look at it that I think go beyond just what an attorney would necessarily say. Not to say that that's not important. And then another issue that I would like to bring up, and that is, you brought it up, Councilmember Whitting, and you and I are good friends, so I don't want people to think I'm picking on you at all, because I do admire you and respect you. I've known you for, probably 20 years. But dealing with homelessness, I think we keep making the same mistakes in Pierce County because we don't invite necessarily the best minds of divergent or diverse minds when it comes to homelessness. I went back to Washington, D.C., and I visited Robert Marbut. He was the director of the Interagency Council on Homelessness. He had homeless policy. He directed homeless policy for 17 different federal agencies. And he has, his whole principle is you cannot enable people. You cannot give them something without them recognizing that they have to make some step, some recognition, and by the way, this isn't a debate, some recognition of what got them there in the first place. And so he was all around the country giving these lectures as the director, and yet he would not be welcome to Washington State. So here you have an expert who is the top in the United States, head of all of these different agencies when it comes to homeless policy. No one would invite him to Washington State. He was not accepted here because the philosophy that you don't enable people is not one that he found anyone here would accept. So I would just say, if you're looking at a comprehensive plan, have an open mind. And I know you have an open mind, but I'm just saying there are lots of people outside of this area who have a different perspective than what we have in the Northwest. And I will just tell you, you just have to go to the Tacoma News Tribune headlines. The other week it said, we're spending more money than we ever had on homelessness, and we are worse off. We have more homeless than we've ever had before. I mean, that same headline is reprinted every single year. They reprint the same headline. We spend more money, and what's the solution? More money, usually. And I just say we've got to stop. And we've got to invite people who may have diverse perspectives on solving this problem. So that's my bit. And then now I'm going to move on to Puyallup High School. Okay, something that I hope we can all rally around. Puyallup High School placed second in the basketball tournament. which was fantastic. The last time they went to the finals, I think, was in 1971. I knew the guys that were on that team. I graduated in 78, so I was a little kid at the time. But that was a big thing in Puyallup, that passing, and I just want to pass on my congratulations to them. We're going to have them, we're going to invite them here to the chamber to honor them. So with that, that's the final comments. No, Councilmember Whitting, this is not a debate. You can come back and debate me all you want during session, but this is not a debate. So with that,
no, I don't want to debate.
I'm sorry, you've had your statement, okay? There'll be plenty of time. All right, with that, and by the way, enjoy Texas and your family there. With that, this meeting is adjourned.